Hey, what's happening, everyone? It is Tuesday, and we are here to talk about video games. This is the Jeff Gerstmann Show for August 12th, 2025. My name is Jeff Gerstmann. I'm your host for this week's installment of the program. And, I don't know. We got a lot of video games and video game news and stuff like that to discuss. The inside of my nose just started itching in a really crazy way, and that's I'm finding that very difficult to deal with right now. Good God! What is happening to me? I'm falling apart. It's like my nose decided to start vibrating at the pitch of my voice today, and just in a very specific Okay. Wow. What has happened? Okay, I'm fine. Hey, hi. What's going on? How's everybody doing? How are things? We've been very busy here. School starts later this week for my daughter, which is weird. Mid-August is a really strange time for school to begin, and so I don't know. We're kind of getting ready for that, and I don't know. We'll see how all of that goes. We went to the mall. What's left of it anyway? I don't know. Like every one of the things when we moved from Northern California to Southern California a few years ago, it was like, oh man, like the malls here are still malls. Like they haven't all fallen apart like every other mall. Like, they're not like abandoned. It's not like every other store is closed. And they were just behind. They're catching up now. The few malls near us are just like, completely falling apart. There was a really desperate arcade in this mall we were at, and they had an air hockey table. Like the only thing I looked in there, and it's not a large room, but I looked in there, and the only thing that I saw that had any kind of redeeming value whatsoever was that air hockey table, and the rest of it was like the walls lined with claw machines, and then like 3 big environmental Raw Thrills machines. I think they had that stupid Jurassic Park shooter and some fucking racing game. I don't know. Arcades are so weird now, like these big, and there was that, this is now old too. This is not new anymore. But the way that mobile games were getting adapted into arcade machines was like troubling in a weird way, where it's like, oh, look at this gigantic doodle jump machine. Why are we okay? Yeah, I mean, I guess these are the intellectual properties that the kids know and love. And it's just super weird seeing all of that stuff. And then also, like, I haven't been to like a good big weird arcade in kind of a while. But last time, and by last time I mean this was 2019. I guess this would have been 2019. The last time I was on the Santa Monica Pier, where they have, that giant like 6-player Halo game that no one talks about because no one goes out and sees any of that stuff. You would think that like the nature, the idea, but like at the time, no one was like, did you know there's a new Halo game? Like Microsoft didn't spend any time going like, yeah, we licensed our thing out to a arcade machine or whatever, but like, it's this big 6-player cockpit, like big standing gun game. And I believe it was 6 players. It was a lot. It was big. And it was just like this crazy thing of just like, oh wow, this is an interesting way to repurpose the Halo IP. Last time we repurposed Halo for anything else, it was making those top-down shooters and maybe Halo Wars, and that was like kind of a big deal. Like people wanted to talk about it. And so this like totally under the radar thing that happens in arcades is really weird. Our coverage of arcade games has always been kind of strange, right? Because you have to go to your local arcade and see what they have. It's not like you can read a magazine and go like, oh wow, this is Zookeeper, what's going on here, and then immediately go and find it somewhere. Especially if years have gone on. It was not that hard to find a Zookeeper machine in 1983 if you knew where to look. But yeah, I don't know. Like it's always just been really strange, and arcade stuff is now like an even weirder and more like a totally separate industry, it feels like, from even mobile games, as well as the kind of traditional gaming industry, where you do just have like, Eugene Jarvis and the rest of Raw Thrills just churning out like a bunch of driving games. I mean, Cruise and Blast came to the Switch, so that's like a kind of a rare case of some of these newer arcade games coming home the way that they used to. Cruise and Blast was one of theirs. But like, there's this whole era of and now it's like a decade plus, I guess, now that we've been doing this. But like, there was a while there that like someone was making a Madden arcade machine, and it's just a PC in a box. It's not like, like it's like a lot of this stuff is just kind of PC based hardware. But like, 15 years ago or something like that, they were making Madden arcade machines, and no one talked about that either because no one ever saw it. And now, like, there was the Fast and Furious arcade games that were like licensed, but just like had the name on it. And then they made a motorcycle game that was still Fast and Furious. I believe it was called Fast and Furious Super Bikes, if I remember right. And it's just this, yeah, I don't know, this weird new lineage that no one is paying attention to happening in arcades. And so, yeah, I don't know, like seeing this stuff every time I see like a modern arcade, I'm always looking at the machines and going like, this is, it feels like it's always the same stuff, but it's not. They keep making like, here's another new motorcycle game made by the same company. It's totally rebranded now. It doesn't say Fast and the Furious on it, but like it's something, I don't know, something. And here's a cabinet, and they got cameras in the cabinet so you can take a picture of yourself, so you can, I don't know, have a picture of yourself on the screen while you race, or show it to the other player when you beat them or whatever. And it's just, all of it is just super freaking strange. So I don't know. I'm always really fascinated when I see arcade machines. There are new Mr. Do machines in arcades. They have repurposed the Mr. Do name for like these really insane redemption machines, and it's not like it's Mr. Do, the character is not on it, but they have like rebranded Mr. Do as like I don't know what Mr. Do is now, but there's a game called Mr. Do Airballs that came out kind of a while ago now. It's not even necessarily a new game, but like it has the Mr. Do logo on it, as you know and love it. But like the character on it is like it's a power ball. I mean, it's almost like, did Mr. Do get turned into one of his power balls? Is that what happened here? Because there's like it's a ball with arms, like it looks like classic Pac-Man, only he's got an attitude, and he's wearing a cape, and you are launching balls through a hoop, some kind of boop, 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 like Redemption, get some tickets and go get a spider ring kind of game. But like it straight up has the Mr. Do logo on it. Like go spend some time looking up Mr. Do Airballs, like I did a year ago. And I believe they even made a sequel to it that even completely like redesigned what the graphics on the cabinet again. And it's really weird. The world of arcades is really weird. Yeah, this is video games have come a long way from clowns and power balls. Now you are the Powerball. Powerball. And you can shoot these air balls into something. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know I don't know what's happening out there. It's terrifying. We were there. We got my daughter's ears pierced. Just before she's ready to start first grade here, age 6. and she is like a daredevil. She is like whatever about stuff. Like, she likes getting shots at the doctor. She's not afraid of it at all. And so, as when she started asking for it and wanting to get it done, I was like, okay, well, like it is gonna hurt like this. And she's like, okay, it's fine. And she sat in the chair, and they popped the first ear, and she was like, ah! And there was a minute there. She was like, okay, maybe we should just do one. And then we were like, we can't. I mean, like, maybe Daddy could get away with having just one earring, but I don't know if that's going to work for you. And then she did the other one. She didn't even notice. Like, the second one, she was just like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. And it was not a big deal. And she's so excited about it. She's so excited about it. And I was against it. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know what the right age is. Like, 6 seems fine, I guess. I know some people are getting like babies' ears pierced, and I think that's I feel a type of way about that. But 6 seems reasonable if she wants it, and she did. She very much did. So, yeah, she's super excited, and that now they're going through the process of cleaning them and making sure that you got to leave it in there for 3 weeks, I think. Or I guess it's you can't take the ones they pierce in there when they go. I think you have to leave those in for 3 days, and then for 3 weeks there's some other, like, you can take it out and replace it or whatever. But it definitely it was definitely a thing where I looked at it and like I don't know that I'd say I felt old. But it was a thing that I felt very strongly about like, oh my God, this is my baby daughter can't get her ears pierced. And I was just like, well, she is 6, and and not having any sisters or anything like that. I don't really have any, frame of reference for like, what's the appropriate age for a kid to get their ears pierced. But 6 is pretty reasonable, kind of all told. But in my head, it was just like, when she's 15, she can, when she's 18, she can get her ears pierced. Damn it. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird, man. But she's super excited about it, and it was fun. And she's just like a little, she's just like kind of a daredevil, I guess. I don't know. She's like pain is not really a thing. Not really a thing for her, and she's, well, that's not true. But she has a higher tolerance for pain at that age than I did. Yeah, when can she enroll in wrestling school? I mean, I feel like around here there's probably a lot of age limits. If we were in some other part of the world, I'm sure if we were in Japan, we could probably enroll her right now. She could be taking flatbacks and running the ropes and getting ready. My wife would absolutely kill me if anything like that were to ever occur. I would be a dead man. But yeah, I don't know. She was. We were in here. We were watching what eventually became the world's longest wrestling match yesterday. And that was done by Mystery Wrestling, run by Evil Uno, who you may know. From he is on the AEW roster and shows up in Ring of Honor, part of Dark Order. But they did it this morning. They ran I believe it was 22 hours and change, as part of a charity fundraiser for a Canadian cancer society. And I popped up on that stream for a little bit yesterday, and that was fun. We exchanged messages back and forth here and there, but I had not spoken to Evil Uno in quite some time, so it was nice to catch up. Even though I don't know that I did a great job of talking about what was happening in the ring. My view of the feed was 20 seconds behind real time, so I don't know that my reactions would have been very good either way. But we talked about what wrestling is today. I gotta get him. I gotta get him on something. We gotta catch up, and I want to delve into that topic a little bit more, I think. But yeah, no, they ran. It was a single wrestling match that ran for something like 23 hours or whatever. And it was insane. I was watching some of it last night, and I believe what had happened was one of the wrestlers had been possessed by a ghost, and the ghost was so he was basically beating himself up in the ring, and he flung himself through a door. Like a door, like a door that was propped up in the corner of the ring. He was having some very serious ghost problems. So he flung himself through a door, and it was mind-blowing. It was mind-blowing stuff. So yeah, I don't know. There are clips and stuff that are you should. I might say don't sit down and watch the entire. Well, you know what? Work your way through it over a handful of days. So that was a pretty crazy happening, I guess I would say, up in Canada. It was fun to be an ever so small portion of that. I was on between, well, who was it? I was on after RJ City and before, Speedball Mike Bailey, and they were on after, so that was super fun. Why don't we take a break? We'll come back. We'll talk about Battlefield 6. I want to know, this Battlefield 6 I'm feeling weird about it. Not necessarily bad weird, but just I'm feeling a little weird about Battlefield 6. Let's come back. We'll talk about it. We'll get into it. Hey, are you still out there shaving with trash tier razor blades? Are you going to the store and buying straight up garbage? Why? You don't need to do this. Harry's knows you don't want to shave with low quality products. And so they found a way to get incredible shave for a price way lower than the big brands. And you don't have to wait in front of some big plastic lockup thing for someone to come unlock the worst razors on the planet for you, because Harry's will just deliver it to you. They will send a set straight to your door. They've got a great weighted handle that feels outstanding in the hand. A very nice razor. German engineered blades that are just awesome. They stay sharper longer, so you can get more use out of them. But on top of that, they're inexpensive to replace. Harry's has customizable delivery options. They'll do scheduled refills for as low as $2. That's half of what you pay for the other big brands. And Harry's has more. They've got deodorant, they've got lotion, they've got body wash, all this stuff that they can help you out with. So get a 5-blade razor, a weighted handle, foaming shave gel, and a travel cover for just $6 at harrys.com/Jeff. They got extra strength, this deodorant. It's high quality stuff. It is not, it's not some of the, again, there's a lot of bad stuff on the shelves. You get out to these stores and you're just like, well, whatever, I got to get something. You're getting some of the worst stuff around. Treat yourself. Some richly lathering, skin softening body wash. They've got scents like redwood, wildlands, and stone. Hair and other grooming products, all that sort of stuff. They've got the highest customer satisfaction in the shaving industry, and it's a no-risk trial. If you don't like your shave, no worries. It's on them. This convenient subscription option lets you cancel at any time. But for these prices and this quality, why would you? Get the edge on your shave with Harry's. Normally, that trial set is $10, but right now you can get it for just $6. at harrys.com/Jeff. There you go. That's the link. harrys.com/Jeff for a $6 trial set. Battlefield 6 has had their first open beta weekend. There's still one more ahead of us here this coming weekend, I believe. They had an ad, I guess, like an additional couple of days of early access on the front end of that. So I think, it was kind of a 4-day period there, Thursday through, Sunday or whatever. And so, this was, I think, most people's first opportunity to get their hands on Battlefield, which is out in October. Battlefield 6, it's funny. The recent interviews with Vince Zampella and, some of the other discussion around Battlefield in kind of the preview phase here has talked about Battlefield 6 as being something of a spiritual successor to Battlefield 4, which is a spiritual successor is a weird thing to talk about for something that is a literal direct sequel to some of the other games in the franchise, but that's neither here nor there. And yeah, this feels a lot like there are different things about pacing and time to kill and some of the stuff that they sound like that they are looking into that maybe some of that was unintentional, but like it really feels like they just kind of sat down and said, all right, what worked on this? And I found myself really being reminded of the identity crisis that Call of Duty went through in the mid 2010s or throughout much of the 2010s, really. Battlefield 6 feels like, less so in some ways because they're not presenting it as such, and I don't think that the departure is quite as dramatic, but like this is their boots on the ground moment. This is their we're giving you back the game you liked. This is our please get excited about this thing that we're making, that we're making it like we used to make it back when you liked it. Oh God, please connect with this game in a way you have not with the last several. This is the same way when Call of Duty went off into Infinite Warfare and all of the kind of games that they made in the middle of that last generation. And players started to feel like, why are we in space? What the hell's going on? These laser guns, like all this other. And then in 2019, they came back and said, all right, here is the Modern Warfare reboot. It is boots on the ground. We are making the game the way we used to, literally calling it the same thing and literally rebooting this. And we're getting back to the thing that you liked about the thing that we used to make. And it worked out super well for them. I look at the 2019 Call of Duty as, I look at the Modern Warfare reboot as saving that franchise from itself. Like that was precisely what they needed, but also it came along with not just the game, like the game was really good. The maps were good, they weren't all old maps and whatever else. Like they made a good game across the board there. Pretty much the co-op mode was kind of whatever. But also the Modern Warfare reboot came with a pretty dramatic tech overhaul. Gun audio finally was good. After years of Call of Duty being like unfavorably compared to Battlefield's gun audio, which was always impeccable, it felt like they finally got that right. Visual quality kind of went up dramatically, and it would kind of pave the way for Warzone to happen and whatever else. And Call of Duty kind of enjoyed a new surge in popularity is weird because it was never unpopular. But people were tiring of it. People were getting to a point with Call of Duty where they were like, all right, the thing you're making, we are less interested in it this year than we were last year. And that was kind of on down the line. Black Ops 4 and 3 even. Not as exciting as some of the games that came before it. And Infinite Warfare, I thought was a really neat campaign and like some of the worst multiplayer they've made. I are some of the like flattest multiplayer they've made, and a lot of the systems and things that they had built around it. Remember, this was also Call of Duty's like loot box era. You know, this was also their like, oh, earn up enough points to open up a case and you're going to get a skin for a gun, and you're going to, like, there was a lot of bullshit there too. And so that Modern Warfare reboot, I think, grounded that game across the board. They, you know, the boots on the ground thing was like a cheeky, silly thing that, you know, when they said it out loud, you were just like, ugh, please. But it was them saying this game doesn't have wall running, you know, like literally it was them saying like, yeah, okay, the space game we made is maybe too far. We need to scale it back from that. And they did. And it went really well for them. Battlefield, I don't think the fall off in Battlefield is maybe like the same. Like the Battlefield's an interesting beast because I think there are a lot of people who stuck with those kind of mid-tier Battlefield games we've gotten over the last handful of years here, and would tell you like, oh, well, it launched bad, but like they got it. Like, you know, there are people that will defend, was it 20? Is it 2142 or 2042? Which is the Oh, it's 2042, right? Yeah, that was the 2021 game. It makes sense because 2142 would be too far in the future, and so 2042 gives them that kind of nice, slightly future tech, whatever. Anyway, and 2042 was supposed to be the game that kind of got it back on track, right? They were like, okay, we're gonna make the Battlefield game the way that we used to make them. And it's going to be slightly futuristic, but not like it, you know, it's not going to be mechs, and it's not going to be ancient history, old gun, you know, World War, you know, like it's not going to be that either. That game, people were extremely unhappy. But like the people who stuck with it would tell you like, oh, hey, you know, it got to a place where it was all right. But like that's, you know, the same people say the same thing about Forza Motorsport, and I don't know that I believe them. So Battlefield 6 doesn't feel like it is as dramatic of a reboot, if you will, as the Modern Warfare reboot was, right? They are making a new Battlefield game, and they are very directly trying to make it something that evokes a past era of Battlefield. It looks nice. Like I really like the visuals in it quite a bit. I think it looks really sharp. The system requirements are not like dramatic and crazy. It loads really fast, which I was like, oh, this is that's like that. That stood out as like, oh, this like I'm kind of in the next match. Like, huh? It still does the thing like Battlefield. I don't know what it is about their menu design or whatever, but like the act of like finishing a Battlefield match and saying, I don't want to play anymore, and then managing to quit the game before it's trying to like match you into the next one sucks. It always has. It still does. It was like, oh, wow, they're really making a Battlefield game here. Look at this. I'm trying to hit the circle button and quit the fuck out of this thing. What menu do I have to open to stop? What the fuck is going, like, you know, they are still they're very much making a Battlefield game by that metric. The thing that really stood out to me here is it's really bing, bing, bang, man. Like there is not a lot of downtime. It is like it feels like a kill box. Like there's really like it does not take much to drop people. It feels like it's maybe a little too fast. Like it is like, when you think about Battlefield, and this is a weird thing because this is the thing that has kind of changed a lot in shooters since since Battlefield was, you know, kind of a big deal. Battlefield 2, Battlefield 3, Bad Company maybe even. But Battle Royales happened. And Battle Royales are now the new king of, all right, let's do nothing for like 8 minutes and maybe see one guy. And some Battle Royale games are compressing that time scale by quite a lot to try to make the action happen. You know, like that's even that is not what it used to be when we're talking about, you know, year one of PUBG. Back when Fortnite was still a fucking tower defense game. Back when it mattered, goddammit. And so, like, previous to Battlefield, previous to Tarkov and some of the other kind of, shooters that have come along that have put an emphasis on, like, yo, man, fucking keep your fucking head down. Shit is real out here. Like, Battlefield kind of used to be that game. Battlefield was the, like, okay, we need to really fucking be on our shit here, and we're gonna run for 3 minutes and get shot in the back of the head, and what the fuck just happened, and oh, we fucked up. We need to skulk in the shadows. We need to be out here, like, careful. Battlefield doesn't really feel like it. Like, this doesn't necessarily feel like that. This feels a little more like, no, get in the action, get in the shit, get your shit in, do a bunch of shooting, get murdered, do it all over again. No one's gonna revive you. Don't even bother. No one's gonna bother reviving you, so don't even bother waiting. Just fucking punch out immediately, because no one here is playing this game to be a medic. Maybe if you have a squad of friends and you're actually playing tight and playing together, then you can revive each other and play the game as it's actually designed to be played. But god damn it, no one is fucking reviving anyone in this goddamn game. And they also just have domination mode in there, which is like a 16-player, like, small versions of these maps, 3 control points, like Call of Duty ass fucking domination is in there. And I ended up playing a bunch of that, which is like, if you thought the main modes felt a little fast and a little chaotic, dude, domination is insane in Battlefield 6. It is just like rattling off, like, shit is just jumping off constantly. There's not a ton of players, and it's, like it is absolute fucking chaos. Like, kind of the way you want it to be. I know they've done domination before, but I don't really associate domination with Battlefield. It feels like a weird mode. It just kind of feels like a weird mode to have. Like, it feels like if you want like, hey, you want a Call of Duty mode in here with the Call of Duty pacing, but like still Battlefield shooting, and still like it feels wrong. But the other modes are still the other modes. You can spawn in a tank and roll around and shoot dudes and do stuff, and it feels safe, in a world where the last several Battlefield games now, or the last few Battlefield games, have not landed the way that they wanted them to land. This game makes a lot of sense, and it's hard because I'm finding myself, and I'm curious what people, like, people in the chat seem like they're also kind of excited about it, but also going through the thing of like, yeah, the time to kill maybe seems, I've seen some people complain about that a little bit, which there were people on the Battlefield team saying like, hey, if you've got video footage of what you think is really crazy, like, you are instantly dying or whatever, we would love to see it. Because it sounds like maybe there's some netcode things happening there, because some people were complaining that they were like hiding behind cover and then getting killed, like almost like shots were registering late. And then it would resync and they would die, or whatever. So, it's possible that they're having server side issues there that are contributing to some of this feeling. But like, it feels like overly, the time to kill feels a little too fast, I think, for what I was expecting, I guess I would say. And that's not necessarily a direct mathematical comparison to past Battlefield games or anything like that. Instead, it was just this feeling of just like, this feels fucking weird. Like this feels wrong. This feels like I am murdering people, and vice versa. Like on both ends of it, it feels like I am just gunning people down in ways that are just like, these guns are too powerful. What the hell's going on? And I'm not sure what the deal is with that, if that's like the intended experience or not. It does sound like something that, they are kind of keeping an eye on, or at least like interested in hearing from people about. But like that's kind of where I netted out on it. It was just like, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't, like, this feels like it's I'm dropping players too quickly, and vice versa. It's like you walk around a corner and blah, and you're like, oh god, we're both dead. Okay, like we both got each other there. I guess that makes sense. That would happen. That can happen. Or I'm getting them, and I'm getting them with like shots to the stomach because I'm not even aiming at the head, and it's just like and really just obliterating people. What feels like too quickly. And of course, that leads to situations where you're just, you're getting killed from behind and from the sides and stuff, and you're not even seeing it coming and not even having a chance to react or whatever, which I think is fine. Depending on how the rest of the game feels, right? That's, guns are guns, right? They're built to do that. But it's just I don't know. It's a strange, like it felt a little weird to me, I guess I would say. On that in that specific way. I didn't play a ton of it. Yeah, like I said, I think it feels safe. I don't have a bad thing to say about Battlefield 6. I think that like they seem like they're basically on the right track for what they're setting out to accomplish in terms of making a game that, kind of evokes the things you liked about the Battlefield games that you used to like. And so on that front, I think they're doing a better job here than they have over the last few games here. And it kind of, but the other thing again, I would say is that it feels relatively safe. It feels like it's them going, okay, we've just got to get our feet underneath us. We've just got to have, like, it doesn't need to be the biggest victory in the world, the biggest win in the world, but we need to have a solid foundation here of something people like out of the gate. We need good word of mouth out of the gate. We need to make a good Battlefield game. We don't need to reinvent the wheel here. As we've tried to reinvent the wheel over these last few games, you've seen the results. Like, let's just go back to basics again. Like, much like the Modern Warfare reboot, this element of like, okay, let's rein it in and make the thing that people like. And that's it. Nothing more, nothing less. And that's I don't know. Like, that's a totally interesting approach in terms of like, again, safe is the word I would use. And that's cool. Because again, I think they're making a solid foundation for Battlefield's future or whatever. But I find myself being not especially excited about it. When I play it, I go like, "Yep, yeah, this is the thing. You are certainly making this thing. Look at this, huh? But like the things I'm coming away from it are things like, well, it certainly does load quickly. It's things like that. It's not like, dude, this feels great. This like, it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, you're cool. You're making another one of those, and that's good because you haven't been really, and so awesome, I guess. Does that make sense? Like and I feel like I've seen some of that reaction to it, but also like, numbers wise, this is crazy. Like, EA put out some kind of release saying, this is such weird phrasing. This is Battlefield's biggest open beta ever. All right. They had queues and stuff. You would launch it and you would see queues that were over 100,000 players long. It was ticking down really quickly in a way that you're like, either their network infrastructure is amazing or these numbers are lying. But Steam numbers did put them up around 500,000 concurrent players. Eurogamer noted that at one point over the weekend, 521,079 concurrent players, and that's just on Steam. That's not including console numbers. Obviously, the beta was also available on Xbox and PlayStation. And so that's fucking great. Or even people playing on the EA app outside of Steam. Yes, there's people all over the place that are playing this outside of the Steam environment. But it's Well, you can't knock that. Those are outstanding numbers, and how many of those translate into sales, we'll see. But like that's it's hard to ask for more. I imagine if you're EA, you probably can't have wanted this. I have to imagine this blew away some of their expectations for numbers. Well, maybe they knew, but this is that's a pretty impressive number for an open beta, and I think it does show that a couple of things, right? That like people want Battlefield to be back, after a handful of games here that have not gotten it done. I do think there is clearly still an appetite for like, man, I want that back, I think it shows that, and it shows that I think that there's still like a strong interest in just kind of your typical first person shooter, right? I mean, the people are still there for that. You think about the shooter community as having splintered into like all these other subgenres, whether it's the extraction action of Tarkov or like a Hunt Showdown or whatever, but like you've got the battle royale kind of stuff obviously still being majorly popular, and then you've kind of got Call of Duty, and then there's just kind of not much else, and Call of Duty is Call of Duty, and so it's kind of a weird comparison point and whatever else. It's just like, Call of Duty is still insanely popular, and then it's on Game Pass, and so there's a lot of weird stuff, there's things that happen there, but like it's interesting to see Battlefield come out and do these kind of numbers, and I'm curious to see how it translates for them sales wise at launch. But again, like coming out of this, it's not just 500,000 people playing it, or I mean more than that. That's just the concurrent number. But it's not just however many people play this open beta and then coming away from it shrugging. Like people seem solidly excited about it. So I want to see what this is going to end up doing. There's been, what was it, that Mike Ybarra guy who was at Microsoft and at Blizzard, or was either this is going to crush Call of Duty and they're going to have to respond and all this other stuff. And I'm like, it's such a different world now. I don't know that I buy it. Also, these two games don't scratch the same itch for me. I think that's kind of an important thing to remember, is Battlefield is not good, despite having a domination mode and having some of these kind of smaller maps to facilitate that. Like Call of Duty is still a pretty different thing. It's why EA eventually decided to start making those Medal of Honor games. When they made those 2 Medal of Honor games, is because they were like, well, like they were able to acknowledge and able to notice that, like, hey man, Call of Duty and Battlefield are 2 different things. If we want to go after the Call of Duty crowd, we need to make a different thing. And so they made those Medal of Honor games specifically to be smaller scale, more Call of Duty like. And that did not go super well. But they were funny. I still think about that guy harassing a GameSpot writer at E3 by taking a bullet out of his pocket and putting it on the table for an interview and trying to be all fucking tough like he was the soldier. Dog, you're a game developer. What the fuck is wrong with you? It was really like embarrassing behavior on their part. I think that guy's out of games now. I don't remember his name. But he was the face of Medal of Honor. He was like the guy. Just like fucking ridiculous. You're like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Insanity. Just one of the dumbest things I've ever like been a part of. Like I heard about it after the fact. Like, I was not there for the actual thing, but like hearing it described to me, and in terms of like, and what do you think we should do about this? I was like, I don't know, man. Fuck that guy. Like, what the fuck are we? Like, what the fuck? Ridiculous. The Medal of Honor games were ridiculous for a lot of reasons. Anyway, yeah, so I will certainly play another chunk of it this weekend when they open the beta back up, but I just kind of find myself going like, yeah, when this comes out, I will fuck with this, I suppose. But again, Like it is the pacing and the structure of Battlefield and what you get out of a Battlefield game is so different from what you get out of Call of Duty that I do think that, like, obviously they're competitive because they're games with guns and people spend time on them and you know, in that sense, you know, pooping is competing with Call of Duty until more of these handhelds get out there and we can play Call of Duty on the toilet. So, you know, the idea of just like, oh, this is the Call of Duty's in trouble. Like, I think that's a really dumb fucking take. And I think that these games have pretty different appeal. And also both of them are fighting for you know, like if we're thinking about player counts and user engagement and in games that are shooters, you know, like we're still talking about Fortnite at the end of the day, whether you like it or not. So like, if that's just, it's a very ancient fight. There's something about the idea of like pitting Call of Duty and Battlefield against each other. They're just like, you know, are we still doing this? This is like complaining about television ratings for wrestling program. These are not the numbers that anyone cares about anymore. This is like Call of Duty's on Game Pass and Battlefield's going to be, you know, $100 game, you know, like the high end version of it's $100 and it's going to also be on EA's subscription thing. And it's going to be the, you know, like there's so many different things about the way games are bought and consumed and played and everything else nowadays that, it's ridiculous. But you know, if we go back to, I believe it was the Ars Technica article that got into some of the expectations that EA is going to have for Battlefield once it's out, and the whatever insane total player count they want to get to. You know, the game's going to probably have to have some kind of free to play component at some point if they want to hit those numbers. Like I don't care how good Battlefield 6 is, if they're just going to charge $70 for it, then, you know, like they're going to probably sell tens of, you know, like they will sell millions of copies of this game for sure. But at the end of the day, there's sort of a limit to where they're going to get to. And, you know, and they're not showing any part of that, right? The talk has been that there's going to be some kind of battle royale mode in Battlefield, and that's going to be their free to play component. And, you know, that is definitely them positioning it the same way Call of Duty positions, you know, Warzone and whatever else. But like, I don't know, at that point, like, I don't really, I don't think I really want that out of, I don't really want another battle royale, I guess. I don't know that I want it out of Battlefield also. But like the shooting and movement and all of that stuff in Battlefield is good. So if they can find a way to put that together, great. But like, again, I don't, you know, just put points A through E on a map and let me push through them. You know, like that's the sort of stuff I want out of a Battlefield game, and I'm willing to pay $70 to get it. Of course, that's not enough, right? There are not enough people out there like me, even if there are 15 million people like me that want that. They want more than that. They need more than that, right? So it's sort of a, you know, they have to kind of try to chase multiple things here and do it all under the guise of one game, even though we're really talking about, you know, if not 2 games, then 3. I mean, Warzone especially is such a, you know, a weird thing now inside of Call of Duty, and the way it gets positioned and the way that they've built that thing. I think it works out okay for them, but you know, originally what I always heard about the way Activision viewed Warzone, the thing I was always told was that Bobby saw Warzone as a demo. This is a demo, go buy the real game. And that was his, you know, he was an old, you know, he had no idea also he's fucking Bobby Kotick, has no fucking idea what, you know, he's a fucking packaged good guy, whatever. But like that it was this idea of like, oh, well, we'll put this out here for free and hopefully people will buy the real game. It wasn't, hey, this is where we're going to see millions and millions of players and we'll have opportunities to monetize them with fucking Cody Rhodes skins and whatever else we sell over the years. There it was like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll put this out here, and and then I'm sure that viewpoint evolved over time, and now he's obviously no longer part of that company, and so Microsoft is probably a little smarter about that, and the way that they kind of view that. But also they haven't really changed it, and I wonder if that's something that they will consider down the line, kind of as they want to start fucking with that formula again. What does that mean? They just did on the 7th, on the start of the most recent season for Black Ops 6, they did make some significant changes, like structurally, to how the Call of Duty games are presented on modern platforms. If you remember that they were lumping in, there's still an entry on Steam that just says Call of Duty. And if you wanted to play any of the last 3 Call of Duty games, that was where you did it. They were all installed into this one increasingly bloated install size, and you could always go in and toggle and turn off checkboxes to uninstall, I'm done with the Modern Warfare 2 campaign, so I'm going to uncheck this box and then it will install it and I'll get the space back. And that, on Steam, that's a weird thing. On console, it was even more fucking ridiculous the way that stuff was built. So last week they broke all that shit apart, and so now when you go to install Modern Warfare 2 or Modern Warfare 3, those games are now separate entries on Steam. They're separate entries on your PlayStation dashboard and whatever else, and you install them separately. And now the install size of modern Call of Duty, because that still includes Warzone, so it's still really fucking high. You know what? I'll tell you what it is right now. My Call of Duty PC install on Steam is currently 178.52 gigabytes. Now that's, I was expecting the number to be over 200, so I'm like, oh, nice. That is still an insanely high number, but remember that before this, the number was over 400 gigabytes. So, 178 is not that far out of line in a world where, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, Star Wars Outlaws is 70 gigs. How much is, we got these bloated video games today. Ninja Gaiden Ragebound, 2.5 gigabytes. What are we doing? What else do I have installed that would probably be large? I don't even know anymore. How big is Doom The Dark Ages? That's 76 gigs. So, a Call of Duty game, as it's seen its final updates or some of its final updates for the year, season 5, 178 gigs makes sense. They've added maps, they've added a ton of characters and fucking skins and all the other shit to this game over the course of the year. So this is in some ways the biggest it will ever get. They will do a mid-season update that will include more maps. So I'm lying. It will technically get bigger one more time before the new game comes out. But they broke it all apart, right? And so you can have those Call of Duty games installed separately. And I suspect that they did this for Game Pass reasons, because for as fucked up as it is on PlayStation and Xbox and Steam, it was even weirder in the context of the Xbox app and how those games surfaced and how they were installed. The Xbox app was just not built to, none of these storefronts were built to handle a game the way that Activision wanted to handle Call of Duty. And so, it's always been a really freaky, it's just a strange way to go about it. And so hopefully they're going to do away with it. Hopefully when Black Ops 7 comes out, they will finally just go okay, we are now separating this stuff out and getting away from this because this is dumb. And I think that they should do the same with Warzone. And it's weird because, there are, and I wonder if some of this stuff is probably because there are shared assets, right? The models and characters that you use inside of Warzone are, in some cases the same as the characters you're using in the multiplayer, gun models, all of this other stuff. So, I'd rather they kind of keep it combined in a way that keeps the install size down. if they have to break Warzone out into its own separate install, hopefully that doesn't lead to you install. I would not want to have to install 2 Cody Rhodeses. I say that, but like that's Cody Rhodes is not in the current Call of Duty. He was in last year's game. So okay, Beavis and Butthead. There you go. There's a more recent Seth Rogen. I would hate to have 2 installs of Seth Rogen. I don't even appreciate having 1 install of Seth Rogen inside of Call of Duty. Breaking out Warzone may lead to situations where actually the overall install size is bigger, which is kind of weird. Which would not be great, I guess. American Dad. They just added is that still a show? It must be, right? I mean, they wouldn't do it for a show that's not on the air, but this is the first time I've heard anyone talk about American Dad in I don't know how many years. Apparently it's still on because American Dad is in Call of Duty now. The cartoon. I don't get it either. I don't know. Whatever. I think on the Battlefield side of things, they have said like, hey, we're gonna try to keep our skins less ridiculous. I believe they have if not full on committed to that, I think they've kind of talked in that direction. To which I say, good, but also I guess you guys don't like money because every other video game is just fucking, and it works, right? I almost bought Beavis and Butthead. I'm not even really like that, but Beavis and Butthead, like I'm not anti Beavis and Butthead, but like I don't care, man. And I almost bought the Beavis and Butthead skins, characters, or whatever for Call of Duty. When they put Jay and Silent Bob, when they put Blunt Man and Chronic into Call of Duty, I was like, well, I would like to see what that looks like. Hillbilly Bibbard asks, Hibbity Bibbard. You should change the name to Hillbilly Bibbard. Anyway, Hibbity Bibbard asks, why do things that are only relevant to people over 40? It's because we're the only ones that have the disposable income to buy any of this bullshit in the first place. So yeah, I don't know. Like on the Battlefield side, I'll be curious to see what they do with skins and whatever else over time, because that's the trend, right? Every single game launches like with something that feels like at least sort of serious, and then over the course of the first year, eventually it gets to a point where there's like, I don't know, man, what if you had lightsabers? We thought it would be cool if you could play as fucking Darth Sidious inside of Battlefield. And I don't know, like yeah, the King of the Hill guys are in friggin' Fortnite now, right? They put Hank Hill into Fortnite. They did, right? I didn't make that. Am I making that? It's all a blur, man. It's all just a fucking like a slurry. It's all just chum. Propaganda V2 asking the important questions. So first descended characters in Battlefield 6 win. When do the soldiers get ass? Yeah, I mean, it's the problem with the game being first person. But I guess that would that would give you incentive to stay with your squad. The First Descendant not immune to this. They launched season 3 of their fucking garbage fire of a video game, and they added 2B from Nier Automata to the game. They separate out the body from the head, so if you just want to put 2B's head on any of the other characters, you can. Any of the other women in the game, you can't put. They separate it. You cannot put swimsuits on the men. They sell separate, more tasteful swimsuits for the men if you want those. I'm sure those sell like gangbusters. I need the lifeguard uniform for these dudes. So, you know, that's a, you know, if you want to put 2B's head on like a incredibly fucking like thin bikini thing, that you have also used paint items to paint skin color so that the bikini is almost invisible, you can do that. They launched their season of they launched season 3 of The First Descendant, and as far as I can tell, what they added was they sat down and said, what if we could put some stuff in here that was kind of like Destiny, but what if we did it the worst way we possibly could? What if we made it bad? They added one new, like, large, incredibly flat open zone that has like enemies in it that are more powerful than just about anything else in the entire game. And they gave you a hover bike. And you're like, oh, I can hover bike around this giant empty landscape and do these 5 repetitive missions that you've put in here. What a great time we're having. And they added a little bit of story stuff that was like that I in just fucking with it for a while to level up a character that I had unlocked. Accidentally finished what seems like all of the new story content in there. I'm out of quests again in that game. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, whatever, man. It's a baffling update of like, what are you trying to put in here? What do you want to make this game? Because gosh, what you have added to do from a pure video game standpoint is straight up fucking bad. It's a really weird rollout for them. Also in Battlefield news, you can't play Battlefield 6 and Valorant at the same time, according to Eurogamer. Now, some people have taken this and the posting of screenshots of error messages are taking this the wrong way. It literally means you can't have them both running at the same time, which who the fuck does that? What fancy life are you living that you have 2 games launched on the same machine at the same time? The reason it happens is because both games have similarly styled anti-cheat. And so if you try to launch Battlefield while Valorant is running, the message does say, like, you need to uninstall some shit, whatever this Valorant thing is. It doesn't pop up and say, get rid of Valorant. It pops up and says, like, something is running that is fucking with it, and then has a little message at the bottom that says, like, it's this, whatever this process Valorant is. And so they're not telling you to not run Valorant. It is just like, hey, don't have them running at the same time because the anti-cheat stuff is targeting the same thing, and obviously they can't be both running at the same time. That just feels like common sense to me. But it was a funny thing of like, yeah, the Eurogamers reporting on it. They said that the head of Riot's anti-cheat team just kind of got on Twitter and said, well, like, here's why you can't do this. Like, obviously, you know, and you read it and you're like, yeah. Don't run 2 games at the same time. I don't know, like, no one is actually doing. Apparently enough people accidentally did this and didn't quit out of Valorant when they launched Battlefield. Like, I don't know. Like, this seems like an insane thing. But yeah, it's not. You don't need to uninstall it, I guess. Like, some people are like, why they're forcing people to uninstall Valorant. This is a anti-competitive. You know, like, no, fucking dummy, get a fucking grip. Come on. Let's take one more break. We'll come back. We'll talk about the news after this. I'm reaching over here, but that's not where it is. It's over here. Here it is. Running a business can mean doing it all yourself. Every single little facet of the business, if you don't do it, it doesn't get done. And so one of the most powerful things you can do is find ways to outsource some of that stuff so you can focus on the things that actually matter. One of the things you can do is work with Shopify. Millions of businesses do. And that simplifies everything about selling things online. Shopify is the e-commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world. 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like Mattel and Gymshark to brands that are just getting started. You can get started with your own design studio with hundreds of ready-to-use templates. Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store to match your brand's style. So get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you. Shopify will help you easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. And best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert. They've got world-class expertise in everything, from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. So turn your big business idea into cash with Shopify on your side. Sign up for the $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/Jeff. Go to shopify.com/Jeff. That's shopify.com/Jeff. Wrong button. I did it again. Let's get into the news. Of course, Battlefield, I think, has been, kind of one of the bigger stories over the past week here. But there more things have happened. At the time of Microsoft's most recent batch of layoffs, a lot of people were asking questions about Contraband, the game that they announced that Avalanche Studios was developing. At the time, there was no new news on Contraband, but it seems that the game has indeed been at least canceled at Microsoft. The word from Avalanche, courtesy of Steven Totillo's Game File, which is his newsletter, is that active development on Contraband has stopped. And that Microsoft has not commented on the game's status. Totillo has a source saying that the game had been in production for 5 years, but was now, quote, on hold. That doesn't necessarily sound like full on. Well, okay, they did then release a public statement from Avalanche again, not from Microsoft. Let's see here. Over the past several years, Avalanche Studios Group and Xbox Game Studios Publishing have collaborated on Contraband. Active development has now stopped while we evaluate the project's future. We are thankful for the excitement we've seen from the community since we announced, and we'll give an update on what's next as soon as we can. So I assume, and this is a big assumption on my part here, but I assume that means that Avalanche is in a position to shop the game around. And if they're able to find a new publisher for it, maybe it will pick up and continue. But to me, this sounds like this sounds like that Xbox has decided that they don't want this game anymore. So I don't. That is basically all we have right now. There hasn't really been any further reporting on this, as far as I can tell. But that does leave its status kind of up in the air a little bit. I mean, they didn't come right out and say, "Yo, this game is canceled." It does sound like that they are. I mean, there would be nothing stopping them from saying that at this point, I would assume, if they were indeed walking away from the project completely. So probably what this means is that they have been, potentially, since these layoffs happened, potentially they have been trying to get out there and shop this game around. It's not unlike what happened with Romero Games, John and Brenda Romero's studio, where that game was reported as being canceled, and then Romero had to come out and say, no, like we're working on finding a home for it. We've had some conversations, or whatever it was they said at the time, but it sounded like they were in a similar position where it was like, okay, Microsoft is not going to carry this game across the finish line, And so they are now free to shop it around somewhere else. I would imagine that whatever number Romero would need to get that game done and out the door is probably lower than what it would cost Avalanche to finish up and ship. So I would believe that Romero's game will get picked up and shipped somewhere. This we'll see, because this seems like it would be a much larger lift. But it's been in. Has it been in production? So the game's been in production for 5 years, which also that seems like kind of a long. Well, maybe in production is a loose term here, but but they've been working on it for 5 years. And if you don't remember, they didn't there was, I want to say it was 2021 as part of their E3-ish their not E3 presentation. They showed a trailer at the Xbox thing for Contraband, and it really didn't have any. It was a tone piece that just said it's a co-op heist game. It was a co-op heist shooter thing set in like the 70s. And yeah, no gameplay that came out of that, no nothing. And so I'm sure that when that game got signed and when they had that trailer or whatever, there probably was not a lot of game there. And so all these years later, you would assume that they would have something much closer, and perhaps even showable. But Microsoft did not show it at any kind of its subsequent press conferences, and now here we are. But their statement says to me that that they are probably in a position to shop it around, and so we'll see what comes out of that. Again, I don't know who's buying these days, who's got the money to publish. I mean, this is a larger than average game, I'm sure. But if Microsoft already paid for most of it, then maybe it's a situation where someone can kind of come in and get it and get it over the finish line and whatever else. But yeah, that's unfortunate. I don't know. Like it's always a weird thing, right? Because all they showed, if you tell me, hey, the Just Cause developers want to make a co-op heist game kind of set in the 70s, I think I'd be like, yeah, that's something I would like to see. But I'm not, like, and this is probably just me and my reaction to video games after all these years, but like, I am never going to jump out of the chair and go like, yeah, about a pitch for like a 2-sentence pitch for a game. And that's what that trailer was. It was 2 sentences basically saying like, oh yeah, the Avalanche is going to work on this game and make it, and it's going to be like a co-op heist game set in the 70s. Like, okay. I feel like that's the most, like, reasonably, I feel like the most you could say about it is like, all right, that sounds like something I would play. That sounds like something I'd be interested in. But in this environment, I mean, especially, games getting canceled left and right, and and it's always been the case. Like things kind of, I've been hurt before, and so I think part of that is maybe a defense mechanism, but part of it is just the reality of it, of just like, okay, yeah, when there's a game to see, when you've got a trailer or when you've got footage of a game running or something, like maybe that will be when I can watch it and go like, yes, okay, yeah. But like for now, it's like, okay, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. That sounds like something they could probably knock out of the park. And probably smart for them to do something else like that, instead of just doing another Just Cause game, which felt like it hit kind of a diminishing returns kind of moment there over the course of that franchise. That said, I would not mind. I would not mind another Just Cause game in this day and age. It has now been long enough that maybe it's wrapped back around that I'm like, you know what? Their specific style of dumb open world game might actually be kind of cool right about now. So who knows? Yeah, playing the Haze campaign has given me a fresh perspective on the games of that generation and how no one makes them anymore. To the point where even the mediocre ones, I'm kind of like, man, these are all right. These are all right. Longing for a weird mid-period. It's not even real nostalgia. It's like it's It's fucking like 2 generations ago. It's like barely. I don't know. Let's see. QuakeCon happened. I think the only bit of news I saw coming out of QuakeCon is that they have remastered and re-released Heretic and Hexen and put them out in one package. This is coming to you from your friends at Nightdive, who specialize in just this sort of thing. And that came out immediately. So they announced that and put it out. It is on consoles. It is on PC. It is $15 if you owned it already on Steam. If you owned those games already, I think that they just kind of give you this new collection, which is sort of how they treated the Quake stuff when they were doing that. I really, really liked Heretic and Hexen when they were first released. When those games were brand new. I really enjoyed those games. If you're not familiar, it is like, hey, what if we took the id Software engines of their specific eras and made games where instead of a machine gun, you had a big giant staff with a glowing gem on it, and that did the shooting instead of a gun. And then you kind of cast some spells, and you know, like it's like they sat down and said, like, could we do like a minor fantasy, you know, swords and staves kind of pass on this on this concept, and you know, and put it back out. And at the time, I think it was fairly successful. Hexen goes a little bit further in that direction, and I think like does all right. And then yeah, they did Heretic 2, which is like kind of crazy too. The thing I have discovered, and I have not returned to this new remaster, I do kind of want to check it out, but the thing I have learned about these games and myself over the past, whatever, 10 years, 20 years, whatever it is that I don't like them that much anymore. It's like when these games were brand new, I was all about them, and then they kept making them for a while, and you reached a point where you're like, all right, guys, I think maybe. But every time I've tried to return to Heretic or Hexen over the years, I have just been like, dude, what? I don't. Okay, yeah. I don't need this in my life anymore. But I do want to see what they've done, and also, I don't know. I remember there being like kind of weird multiplayer options in those games originally. So now, you know, if people are playing it online again in this new version, maybe that would be like an interesting thing to do. And they made some new stuff. There's new chapters in each game that they put in this new version of the game, which is sort of like this, sort of similar to some of the stuff they did with the Quake re-releases and Doom stuff that they've done. So cool. Cool, but like I don't know. Sure. I guess you got to do this. When is Nightdive going to re-release Blake Stone? Nintendo had an indie showcase last week, and they showed a handful of games. Mina the Hollower was there and got a release date. That'll be released on Halloween of this year. But a handful of games. Caves of Cut is coming to the Switch, and UFO 50. I think that's the actual, to me, the actual news here is that UFO 50 is finally out on the Switch. They put it out. It's out. You can get it. You can get it. If you have not played UFO 50, you should. I don't care what platform you play it on. It is out, theoretically out now on Switch. I have a Switch around here somewhere. I had to disconnect it to hook up a PlayStation 3. You know how it goes. You should play UFO 50. That's cool that it's on Switch. That seems like a really fun platform to play it on. It was a fun game to play on Steam Deck, so I'm assuming that carries over the fun portable feel. But UFO 50, no matter how you play it, you should play it. It's awesome. It's a fantastic collection of weird games and like fun secrets along the way. UFO 50 is one of the previous year's best video games. You need to play UFO 50 if you have not. Sony delivered its financial results. This is kind of like larger than just games, but kind of the larger Sony giving some of this stuff. But they did, the CFO of Sony did give some information about some of their gaming ventures, which I thought were interesting. VideoGamesChronicle.com did as well, and pulled some of this stuff out. They talked a little bit about some of the live service stuff. The CFO, Lin Tao, kind of, has acknowledged that they have faced something of an uphill battle with their quest for live service games, but that they still are worthwhile because, quote, because they've added a revenue stream that didn't exist for the company. This stuff came through an interpreter, but it says last year Concord shut down and this year Marathon was postponed. So somewhat negative news has been coming out. But if we look at the past 5 years, 5 years ago, live service games were almost non-existent for PlayStation Studios. We now have, and this is interesting because it will tell you the games that they view as live service games. We now have Helldivers 2, MLB The Show, Gran Turismo 7, and Bungie's Destiny 2. So we have these 4 live services contributing to sales and profits in a stable manner. I mean, GT7 has currency, right? You can buy money in that game. And obviously MLB The Show is a sports game and has had like those types of transactions and whatever else for kind of a long time. But has it been more than 5 years that MLB The Show has had that stuff? I feel like it has been. I feel like they were doing that stuff on the PlayStation 4 quite a bit. So I don't know. If you want to say that that's a live service game and not just another seasonal sports game that does what seasonal sports games do, and they ship a new one every year, I think that's maybe the breaking point for me on this stuff, is when you have an annual franchise, it's kind of the antithesis of a live service. A live service that only runs for 12 months is not a live service. That is a game with a bunch of microtransactions. Because then the next game comes out and you piss away all the money you spent on last year's game. Double middle fingers, buddy. Do it all over again. You need new packs of cards. You need a fucking Tony Gwynn legend card or whatever the fuck you get in that goddamn game. And so, yeah, I don't know. Like it's just kind of a weird. It's weird. And Gran Turismo, I guess is technically sure they released updates for it and they sell currency and whatever. Like there is a update cadence to that game. But it's, I don't know. That's sort of a fucking strange thing. And Helldivers 2, they tried to position that game as kind of the antithesis of live service. Fat Scout in the chat says, I mean, Call of Duty is a live service and also a yearly thing, but it's also 2 games. Warzone has some carry forward things in it that go from year to year. Like there's DLC you could have purchased. Like I would argue that Warzone is a live service game and Call of Duty, is its own thing, but also the purchases you make in an annual Call of Duty game can filter into the characters that come with the base level of a game or whatever will filter into the free to play game. I mean, whatever. Like but my point is that there's some nuance there that MLB The Show I don't think has, unless your currencies and cards and stuff carry from year to year, and I'm just not aware of that, which is certainly possible, but I don't think that's the case. So yeah, I don't know. Like and they're saying that live service games accounted for around 40% of first party revenue for the past quarter in Q1, and then for the full year it's around 20 to 30%. And her take on it is, so in terms of the transformation It's not entirely going smoothly, but from a longer term perspective, if you look at the changes over 5 years, you see there's definitely been a change. Of course, we recognize that there are still many issues, so we should learn the lessons from mistakes and make sure we introduce live service content where there's less waste and it's more smooth. That's my regimen as well. I want less waste, but I want it to be more smooth. As for Marathon specifically, she did kind of say some specific stuff there. Saying first about Marathon, how we factored it in the forecast. We expect the launch to happen within this fiscal year. But having said that, this is not a commitment. No official announcement has been given yet. So they're forecasting Marathon to be out before the end of March in their own forecasts. But she also is unwilling to commit and say that's when it's happening. I would think that would happen one way or the other. I think if they don't ship this fiscal year, then they're going to have to do stuff all over again. She says, we are now doing modifications in development, and based on the progress in the autumn timeframe, we believe we can communicate when we launch Marathon, either from Bungie or PlayStation. And there's kind of a weird acknowledgement here about the way Bungie is being run. And Sony taking more control over the management of Bungie, which is maybe a weird thing for a CFO to get on a call and say, but about the governance of Bungie at the time of acquisition. Again, remember, this is all filtered through an interpreter. About the governance of Bungie at the time of acquisition, we were offering a very independent environment. So that was one way of thinking. However, thereafter, we have gone through structural reform as we announced last year. So this independence is getting lighter, and Bungie is shifting into a role which is becoming more part of PlayStation Studios, and integration is proceeding. So in the long term, if you can see this as an ongoing process, the direction is to become part of PlayStation Studios. And so, basically acknowledging that like Bungie is going to, again, run through an interpreter, the lighter independence and some of that. So you're like, But the upshot of that is, I think it's something I said at the time, that like when a studio gets purchased and then, when a business gets purchased and gets to run independently, ultimately that is, something that, how long is that cultural, environment going to be maintained, and to what end? And, like you hear all the stories about Blizzard's corporate culture under Activision, and how, there were people there who were like, they were the firewall. They were the people keeping Blizzard from getting all Activisioned out. And then those people retired. And that's done, and Bungie, Bungie has fallen on hard times, Daddy. And so, there's sort of a, it's unsurprising that Sony would go like, oh, well, I mean, you guys aren't even making the numbers that, you were forecast to make. And now like what is going on over there? Like Marathon, like what is, okay, we need to, and they are putting a firm hand on it. This is sort of like, I think you saw an acknowledgement out of Matt Booty, I believe, in the wake of Redfall's release, and saying like, oh yeah, we kind of didn't really have a firm hand on these studios. And we let them operate independently, and like, maybe we should have intervened sooner. And so, but the story is the same, right? When you sell the company, it is borrowed time before, like, the culture is different, the whole thing is different. The people that made that company what it is will either, they will work out their contract, get their earn out and bounce, or they will be ground into dust under the new like it's how it happens. So yeah, I wonder like how much longer will we talk about Bungie as if it's its own thing, and when will they just kind of, Bungie is just another PlayStation studio, and how long will Bungie be Bungie, and until, it just becomes like, oh, we've centralized all the people we intend to centralize, and now they're all part of this central services team for this live service operation that we're trying to build. And I don't know, like, if Marathon hits big, then maybe that's a different story. But like, at what point do we stop referring to Bungie as Bungie because they have all been subsumed into different parts of Sony and like, you know, and Destiny is no longer a thing. And, you know, I don't know. Like I guess my point is how many more years do you think Destiny 2 has? And what do you think they do? I guess, like, do you think that there's do you think that there's a Destiny 3? Do you think that there's like a whole new release of Destiny? Or do you think that they just keep putting out content, like, you know, because there are still players, are still players playing Destiny 2 and, you know, enjoying or not enjoying that content or reacting to that content one way or the other. But like, yeah, you know, like I imagine that they will keep releasing some chunks of content for Destiny 2 for as long as that makes sense. But like, I can't imagine that game's going to still be up and running, like, unless there's some dramatic change in its trajectory. It's hard to envision a place where Destiny 2 is still around in 5 years. And if it is, it's probably not thriving. It's probably not something that is like, oh well, and we got it all back. It's, you know, like, I don't think that there's a scenario where, like, even, you know, and people have said that the most recent Destiny 2 content is pretty good. But that's pretty good is not going to change anything about anything, you know, like and realistically, you know, post layoffs and everything else. And, you know, now they're splitting focus to, you know, obviously they're working on Marathon and all this other stuff. It's hard to, again, it's just hard to envision a scenario where Destiny 2 is an ongoing concern on the PlayStation 6. And that's 2 years out, probably 2 or 3, right? Do you think there will be a PlayStation 6 version of Destiny 2? Will Destiny 2 matter enough in 2 or 3 years to where they will feel they have to produce a PS6 version of the client? Or will they just go, yeah, all right, and that'll be that? It depends, right? You know, like how many players are still playing it and how, you know, what sort of, how are they monetizing? Like it is one of those kind of bar graph line chart sort of things where this line crosses this line and then you go, okay, yeah, you know, the revenue number and the player number have hit a certain line with the cost of the studio, and like, okay, we're down here now, and we are pulling this thing. We are sunsetting Destiny 2, right? I don't want to see that. I don't know. I still have Destiny 2 installed. I have been meaning to check out the new stuff that they released for it recently, but like, you know, it's the same story for me with Destiny 2, where I launch it and go like, I don't even know what I'm looking at anymore, you know? And yeah, yes, Destiny 1 I think is still technically playable, right? You might be right there, that, you know, maybe they just stop releasing new content and there's like, if you want to buy these skins, we'll keep selling them to you instead of shutting it down. But I don't know. It would probably take a lot of work for them at this point to like unvault the content that they took away, right? So it's you want to envision a kind of final version of Destiny where they just go like, here, it's all here. Everyone is here. Cade, the lady from the hangar, all of the famous Destiny characters. But like, yeah, it's hard to envision them getting to a place where the entire game is kind of all back together again for some kind of like, here's our final update. And if you want to, you know, play Crucible for the next fucking 9 years, and, you know, maybe we'll release some skins with fat 7s on them. I don't know, you know. Yeah, it's hard to envision them doing the work it would take to kind of get that stuff back into some kind of playable format. Either way, that's, you know, I don't know. Like that's not necessarily what these stories are about, but like reading what the CFO had to say about their live service stuff and kind of the future of Bungie, that is immediately where my mind went, is just like, oh man, we are probably going to see a day where they shut down Destiny 2. Or at least like mothball it in such a degree that like it's like, oh, it's still running over here. If you want to play it, you can. But but it's done. Like we thought they were going to do with Anthem, but now they're shutting down. They're planning. What is the Anthem shutdown date? How much longer do we have to enjoy Anthem? January 12th, 2026 is the server shutdown date for Anthem. Recyclable Sigh says, is it worth trying Anthem? So when the news came out that they were going to pull the plug on Anthem next year, I did reinstall Anthem and play a single mission of it. And no. If you have it for free as part of, because like, what is it? If you have Game Pass, you get the free tier or the lowest tier of EA access, right? I assume Anthem is on that. And so if you can check out Anthem for $0 additional, and you have nothing else going on, and I don't mean that to say that Anthem is like the worst game in the world or anything like that. It is just that the action in that game is so mind-blowingly flat, and the loot you get out of it is so insanely bland that there's not a lot to see there. If you are friends with a couple of people and you just like burning through games and kind of, doing whatever, like you could do worse than Anthem. But returning to Anthem after not having played it for a pretty long time, it was an eye-opener in terms of just like, man, like this game, I don't remember this game being this bad. Like it is not held up. On top of everything else, it also feels like, man, if you want a mediocre loot game, you could do a lot better than this. Okay, so you do have you don't have much time left to play Anthem for $0 additional. Karth says it is leaving EA Play and Game Pass on August 15th. I believe they are also going to be pulling it from stores. It's so, they're pulling it from digital stores before too long here as well. So, but they were selling physical copies of Anthem for like a fucking $1 in its year of release, if I remember correctly. So it's not like you could find a disc, you could get a copy of Anthem. And also, like I wonder, it's 180 days, I think, is what what they announced was left for the Anthem servers. That's 180 days for someone to capture packets and potentially put together an Anthem private server, which I think would be very funny to do. I would be curious to see if you had a really good private server for Anthem, could you fix parts of it in terms of like, let's just, change the drop rates on this loot in a way that makes it like a little more friendly. Anthem is a game that is designed against type. Anthem is a game that you look at and go like, dude, I'm this cool flying fucking mech suit. This is fucking awesome. And then you're like, okay, yes, that's true. But also your flying mech suit overheats a lot. And so it is not something you can always fly. You can fly through a waterfall to cool it off. And that's like a neat idea. But like it's not really a game about you flying around like fucking Iron Man and shooting off fucking drunk missiles and all this other stuff all the time. It is... they tried to come up with an ability, like a spell cat, like in their ability system that you have. They tried to build it in such a way that you have like sort of like Mass Effect, where you have, you inflict something upon enemies and then detonate it with your other skill. And there's not a lot of nuance to it because the characters and classes and whatever else don't really develop in interesting ways. And so you get to the end game. I finished Anthem and did like they eventually added a tiny bit more end game to it after I had stopped playing. But I saw quite a lot of Anthem. I finished Anthem before the game came out because they sent it out for review. and I played all the way through Anthem and played a fucking fuckload of Anthem and was like flabbergasted. That was a good case of like, you know, people often ask like, oh, what's a game that you played pre-release or you played some kind of demo of and really liked it more than the full game or whatever else. Anthem is a great case of that, where we sat down, myself and one Brad Shoemaker sat down and played Anthem at like NVIDIA had it in some back room at E3. And we sat down and played Anthem. And like playing a single mission of Anthem without really getting a sense of like what the loop of like, oh, here's the loot you get and here's the abilities you have and here's this and that. Like first exposure to Anthem, it was like, dude, this feels fucking awesome. Like, wow, this could be fucking rad. Like this, you know, like this looks really nice. Like the shooting works, like, you know, all this stuff works. And you're like, okay, but, and your brain wants to fill it in with like, what do good games do with loot and options and progression? And you start to think about it in those terms. And then the final game came out and you're like, oh, and a lot of the enemies that you're fighting are not interesting to fight. And the puzzle sequences they put in where you've got to like get these balls and get them here and do this. And like that stuff super sucks. And like there was so little iteration on the core concepts of Anthem that by the time it came out, and even, man, I remember like that was a case where like they did, like, it was like an early access situation where some players were playing the game 3 days early or whatever. And the word of mouth in those 3 days was so fucking negative that there was an immediate like, oh, well, players are running into a situation where, you know, that we're patching that. I mean, on day one, the game, like they had to like try to fall back on like, when our day one patch hits, this will be different. And you're like, okay, the people who really wanted to play your game the most paid you extra, and you gave them what is in theory a bad version of the game, and now you're promising to fix it after they've already played it. Like that's a bad scenario. But then on top of that, whatever, they didn't fucking fix it. Like it just had like major issues. Like it was not running well. It was like, I want to say for some people it was like crashing a lot, but it's ancient history now. I don't remember the specifics, but I remember getting through it on PC. And so I have like an end game character on PC. And I started playing it on PlayStation at some point during that kind of review process or whatever it was. And man, yuck. Anthem's a very interesting tale, you know, especially when you hear about kind of the last ditch efforts that people inside of BioWare wanted to put together to go like, hey, if you'll let us roll out this kind of 2.0 update, if you'll let, like, we can reshape Anthem into a better game without a ton of resources. Like it'll take an investment, but like we know we can make this game better than it is today. And that EA sat down and looked at it and again did the thing where they're looking at the chart and the lines and this and just went like, nah. And I cannot blame them at all. Like when you think about what Anthem was, and I think even on the other side of that update, it would have been like a better game for people that already kind of liked Anthem, which is not a lot of people in the first place. Like it would not have saved Anthem and made it a smash hit. It would not have hit the sales projections that EA probably had for it out of the gate. It wouldn't have been that level of change. So it's unfortunate because I think there are some cool looking, there's some cool art in Anthem. Some of the robot suits look kind of cool and you can paint them and do some stuff. Like, I don't know. It's almost, but man, the story is so fucking stupid, and the like so much of the writing is so bad, and like the things that you wanted out of a BioWare game, or the things that you associated with the BioWare name, namely having sex with aliens, like that, you know, like none of that was really present. Like, you know, they're just, you know, it just felt like this very stripped down, kind of boringly told story, and all of that other stuff, man. Anthem is like 9 missed opportunities stacked on top of each other, and I'm sure that the reasons why those opportunities were missed are interesting, but none of it changes the fact that that game is dull as shit. And and nothing they had on their rollout, nothing they had on their little like our year one update plan, or like nothing there was going to change the course of Anthem. It's interesting how it ended up there, and the stories that you hear from people who worked on it and whatever else, like those are all fascinating. And it's a classic mashup of big corporate mismanagement combined with like ideas that just didn't pan out, and the cuts and compromises that had to be made to those already kind of middling ideas to try to get something in shape to ship, and the end result is a game that probably no one felt good about, but at least it got out the door. And they could at least feel good about shipping a thing, but yeah, I don't know, man. Anthem. Speaking of BioWare, Mark Dara, who was an executive producer at BioWare for damn near 24 years, according to VideoGamesChronicle.com. He showed up on a YouTube video from a channel known as Mr. Matty Plays, talking about some of his time at BioWare, and had some kind of interesting things to say about Dragon Age, and kind of why Dragon Age, those initial Dragon Age games never got re-releases. There's some kind of fascinating quotes here, talking about like remasters and stuff. And he says, this is kind of why I pulled this. He says, EA's historically been, and I don't really know why, but they've even said this publicly, they're kind of against remasters. It's strange for a publicly traded company to basically seem to be against free money, but they seem to be against it, but that's just part of it. The other problem is that Dragon Age is just harder than Mass Effect to do, and to some degree unknowably harder, maybe only a little bit harder, maybe a lot harder, which makes sense. He's talking about the context of like, what if they remastered the trilogy of the first 3 Dragon Age games, which he says is something that they pitched multiple times, and were shut down every single time. Even in the idea of like, like this is stuff that, it's not necessarily BioWare doing this. What if we outsourced it to this team and this team, and, they could remaster it that way, but, multiple types of tech and everything else. The other thing I might say in that case is like, I know Dragon Age 2 has its fans, but I don't know that I would say that Dragon Age 2 is a game that needs to be reworked and re-released. It feels like the overall sentiment on that game as the sequel to the first Dragon Age game are that it was kind of a letdown. My wife likes all the Dragon Age games, including Dragon Age 2. And the people who love Dragon Age 2, they love Dragon Age 2. And they're, I don't know. But really, you'd probably only do, I don't know, like the first one. Or like you would remaster Dragon Age 1. I think if you were going to do anything there, and you might do Inquisition. Because I think, I don't know, I as someone who watched my wife play through Dragon Age Inquisition like twice and then played about half of it myself, that game is okay. It is, I think Inquisition is potentially a thing that you would be bad. You would be mad about it as a Dragon Age 1 fan. You would look at it and go like, look at what this series used to be and what it is now. It is kind of another point on that timeline of like, this used to be fucking serious shit. And now it's you running around kissing people. What the fuck? And so I see why people would be mad about it. Like the story in Inquisition was fun. It was just like the big invisible wall, like the big tall canyons and like the dumb, like that's the stuff. What do I remember about Dragon Age Inquisition? It's how do I get from here to there? These walls, the walls on this canyon are so tall. What the fuck do I do? And I don't trust Solus. He seems like a scumbag. That's what I remember about Inquisition. The first Dragon Age, I mean, that was like, hey, we're going in and out of real time, it was a very, very different game. Though, yeah, I mean, yes, there was still kissing in Dragon Age 1. But Dragon Age 2, no one really wants that. Anyway, I guess like the interesting thing here is that this is still EA's MO. This is still the way EA is. And I think about, I remember talking to someone who was at EA and they were like, hey, there's been a lot of talk. I don't know if we're going to do it or not, but there's been a lot of talk about remastering the Crysis games. And they had spent a long time thinking about if they were going to do these remasters of the Crysis trilogy without the multiplayer. It was just like, what if we did this? And that'd be cool, right? And there wasn't, and those games ended up happening. But I was looking it up last night as I was kind of looking at this story and trying to remember the scenario that this all went through. But like, they did release a remastered Crysis trilogy, but the publisher of record on all of them is Crytek. And so Crytek kind of did them themselves. But my understanding is that at one point EA was looking at being involved in it, because EA did publish like Crysis 2 and 3, right? Is that? But yeah, eventually those games did happen. But years before that, there was talk about them happening at EA, and I remember them not happening. I remember thinking like, oh, that'd be kind of cool if it happened. And when I heard like, oh, well, we wouldn't do the multiplayer, I was like, no, I don't know that multiplayer is necessarily the key part of any of the Crysis games in the first place, but it is kind of weird to not have it. I guess if you released all 3 games at once in one big collection, then that's an easier pill to swallow because there's a lot of game there. But I think, in that situation, it was probably a case of like, well, realistically, if we're selling Crysis 2, let's say, if EA put out a Crysis 2 remaster with no multiplayer, how much could they sell it for? How much would it cost to make, but also how much could they sell it for? It would not be a full price release, because that campaign is not super long, and it's, it's a remaster, and it's like, like at that point, are you like, okay, well, we're kind of like cranking out this remaster and selling it for $20? Like, who's that? You're not, Mark Dara says here is like, oh, they seem to be against free money when he talks about them not liking remasters, but like, it's not enough money for them to care, like not profit, like revenue maybe, but like for these situations where they're not going to sell these games at full price anyway, like does it become worth it for them? I mean, you saw what they did with Dead Space, and they didn't even follow up on that. Like that Dead Space thing they did recently was like really good. But even then they did not race to go make another one of those. EA is the company that like I think of the most, because they're kind of one of the last ones left. But like EA is the company I think of when I think of someone going like, oh yeah, that would make money, but not enough for us to care about. The time we're taking to have this meeting, the number of things that would have to get, the number of people that would have to get involved to make this happen, we could instead be having meetings about bigger full-priced products, and we could be focusing our efforts there instead of like this relatively rinky-dink remaster thing you want to do. And so it became, I think, very easy for them to just not entertain those types of conversations, because it's just never been a big... They've always been really obsessed with these big swings, and you've had them come out, I think, in the Riccatello era even, so, it's hard to say if that they're still here in this mentality, but it really was, when they were like, oh, well, fucking single player games are for dipshits. Like, what are we going to sell this thing and you're going to play it for 20 hours and never give us any more money for it? Why would we do that? When instead we could be focusing on these multiplayer things that are going to have, multiple monetization opportunities. And, like they were really thinking about it that way, and really trying to, produce those types of products. And, we ended up in a situation where they eventually did do that Mirror's Edge that everyone was clamoring for. And then it came out and it was like, oh, this is okay, I guess. I don't know. And then they noted the sales of that versus the outcry that led up to its announcement and development. And they're like, all right. So don't do the things that people say that they want every single time because they're wrong. Okay. All right. Okay. And now here we are with Skate, right? Hashtag Skate 4. A game now just known as Skate. A game that is going to be a free-to-play game where they're going to probably sell you a ton of clothes and whatever else. Probably the only way that the developers who were pitching a new Skate game could get it happening was to go, oh, well, we can't make it like Skate 3. We can't just make it a one and done game that you're going to buy. No. Instead, we need to try to modernize this and monetize it in a modern way and all of this other, there's, it's going to be a very different style of thing. The thing I like about the Skate games were, I thought the stories were fun. The FMV intros were amazing. And that's the sort of stuff when I go like, oh man, I would love to play another game in the Skate series. Like, that's the stuff I'm thinking about, And I know that people, it's funny. we were talking about playing Haze online against other players in 2025, which you can do on a PlayStation 3 emulator, not on real hardware. But the service that runs all of runs all of the matchmaking and whatever else for kind of the modern new replacement, PSN that people made. You can go see what people are playing at any given time, and it's not always multiplayer games because I don't think the multiplayer in it works. But the highest number on that list is Skate 3, and so it's a lot of people that are still, and that's what led to the revival of Skate was probably all of these kind of short form videos of people doing really crazy shit with Skate 3. And finally making the Skate franchise viral in ways that they envisioned out of the gate. We're going to put in all these cool tools for you to record your footy and edit your footy, and you can publish your footy. We're going to keep saying footy because that's what skaters say. And then TikTok happened, and suddenly you saw all this ridiculous footage of Skate and Skate 2 and 3 being played. And it probably made it a lot easier for them to greenlight a new Skate. But at what cost? What is that thing? Is that thing going to have a story? I know they put out the trailer that had Tim Robinson in it. Is that going to be in the game? Or is that something they're just doing for an ad? It kind of does set up something resembling a story, at least in the little video they ran. So, hopefully some of that is represented in the game. But if that's a game that they intend for people to play for a decade or more, because they're going to keep putting new skate parks and pants in it. They're not going to roll out new FMV every couple of years to go here's a fun new story. It's just, they're probably not going to do it. It's just going to be some kind of live service thing, right? I assume. So yeah, I don't, it's, so that is EA to me. So, the idea that EA would not be hot to do remasters of the Dragon Age games. I'm like, yeah, why would, why would they? That's so not them. It's never been them. The idea that they remastered the Mass Effect games were weird. The Dead Space thing seemed like something of an anomaly based on how averse they've been to this stuff for years. And having, again, talked to people that wanted these things to happen over the years and were trying to pitch them not just from BioWare, but from all across EA, different remasters and remakes, and what if we brought back this old IP and whatever else. The size of the pitch that EA seems to always want has to be way bigger than re-releasing Dragon Age. And I think that's, I guess my point is I don't think any of this is surprising, yeah. That's EA. That's always been EA for as long as I've known an abundance of people who work at EA, which is, you know, a lower number these days than it has been in the past, I will admit. But yeah, that's always been EA. EA's MO has always been, what's the biggest possible pitch we can do? What's the biggest money-making thing? What's the biggest swing we can take? We're not interested in, you know, like, take that shit to the EA, take that shit to the indie division, you know? You want to go publish Hazelight stuff? Like, yeah, sure. Go over there and do that there. And that was something that would hold division of, you know, when they published Alice and whatever else. Like, that was something they were very proud of. And it was something they could lean back on and go like, look at, you know, yeah, let's see, we're doing artistic. These are video games and people care about them. You know, now it's like they still sort of do that. They do still sort of publish those games, but not, they don't tout the division and the I don't know. They never quite painted that work as altruistic, but it was like, there was definitely like when they were talking about things like Unravel and that sort of stuff, there was definitely an attitude to it of just like, see, we're not just the soulless fucking football machine. We have yarn, you know, like, it was always just a weird, it felt very like a cynical sort of move on their part, but maybe, I don't know. Anyway, that's it for the news. There's a new Helldivers trailer that, you know, seems like they're maybe pointing towards some kind of Halo crossover thing for the Xbox version or whatever. Because that's out this month. That's out pretty soon here. Why don't we take some emails? podcast@guard.bike is the email address. You can write in to me. And I will read your emails. Shiny wrote in just now and asked about some of the biggest news. I remember hearing you talk about being on the Sega conference call or around it when the news came that they would be pulling out of the console market. Have there been other moments in time where you heard news break and you were just anticipating what was going to happen once it went public? Something that make you think, oh shit, for better or worse? Yeah, I mean, Sega pulling out of hardware was definitely a big one, and knowing that was going to happen was definitely a big deal. I think this most recent Xbox layoff stuff, there was like a tiny bit of that, of just like, I know, but I think everyone kind of knew that was coming. That wasn't, you know, that was kind of relatively public information at that point. I'm trying to think if there's any other kind of, you know, bigger moments. Like, there's stuff that's like in games, you know, this is kind of sort of tethered to the surprises in games stuff, but the Raiden in Metal Gear Solid 2, Arbiter in Halo 2 stuff was definitely up there in terms of like knowing that, like, oh my God, this is crazy. Yeah, the Xbox One stuff was weird, you know, because that was an event, right? Like, we went up to, I found like my lanyard from that event the other day, but they had everyone go up to the Microsoft campus or whatever. Campus, it's a fucking office, it's a set of office buildings. Get off your high horses, you campus people. Your office is not a campus. It's not just Microsoft. Everybody stop it. Anyway, we went up there and saw the Xbox One, and that day was really weird because they for all the buildings they have, they also built a big stage on the grass and built a big building, a big fake building surrounding all of their real buildings, and they had us all file in there and sit down and watch the presentation about the Xbox One, where they got up there and talked about TV, the supercut of them saying the words TV over and over again. I lived it. And then like they sent us around to different areas around the different buildings to take different demos. And so one of those was the like, look, it'll do Skype. But another one was like, look at this room full of controllers. And here's the one we're intending to use, and you can use it and feel the triggers and how it all rumbles and how, you know, we've got one that you can check out. But also here's a bunch of like, you know, here's where we build our prototypes and here's our lab for testing this stuff. And, you know, that it was really interesting to see it. And they were like, here is the room that is dead silent that we stand in to record audio, or, you know, like when we're testing out Kinect voice recognition, we need this like insane madness inducing silent room. And we got to see all of that different stuff. And that was super fascinating to see how they iterate on the ideas and how they come up with this. And, you know, the information about games was relatively light, as you might expect, for, you know, how this event went down and how people talked about it afterwards. But this was the event where, you know, afterwards, after everyone did all their interviews and everyone talked about, you know, all the journalists got back on the bus to go from, like, what is it, like Bellevue to Seattle, Redmond, you know, whatever it is, to go back to where the hotel was. Everyone started comparing notes and realizing that they had been told different things, because all of us got assigned different executives to interview. They kind of spread out who got to talk to who. And so if you talked to Phil Harrison, you got one message. If you talked to Albert Pinello, you got a different one. And if you talked to, you know, like they were not straight on what they were doing, especially with regards to, the kind of, you know, the always online stuff that eventually kind of broke out of that. And just that moment on the bus of like all of us, I remember Brian Crescente was there and like holding his notes, and just like it was a lot of us just looking around and going like, what? He said what to you? And it was fucking crazy. It was like this sinking in moment for a lot of people. I think it was maybe all of us that were at the front of the bus. I don't know if the whole bus was on this, but I remember Crescente holding a notebook and looking around going like, wait a minute, what? Like all of us just kind of like comparing notes on some of these interviews and realizing just how like none of this made any sense. None of this lined up. It was just like this all feels crazy. What the fuck is happening? And then trying to get clarity, and the hole being kind of dug even deeper at that point of just like, okay, you know, we're hearing some different things out of your event here. Can you set the record straight on this stuff? And they're like, yeah, it's the worst case scenario of everything you guys have been talking about. You're like, oh, great. Wow. No shit. Okay. That's not going to go well. So I think there was some realization there around the Xbox One. And you know, like that was such a crazy time because you had Sony's silly ass response because Adam is Adam. And that was a lot of fun in the middle of it, you know, but then they rolled back, and I would love to know what that whole time was like, because it was like to be internal on the Xbox team at that point, because, you know, when they did reverse course on that, the story was that basically, and I'm sure there are a million stories, but like that they had to re-engineer significant portions of the way that console functioned, you know, practically over, I mean, not literally overnight, but like they were out of time, and they had to completely reverse course on something that they were banking on being a pretty core part of the way the console functioned. And the amount of work that went into getting that console unfucked as much as they could by launch day, just crazy, you know, because they were also like, yeah, that was the other thing, is they were like, oh yeah, you'll have a Kinect hooked up to your Xbox. Like, well, what if I don't? It won't turn on. I'm sorry, what? Yeah, the console, you know, you started hearing stories about like, oh yeah, if we try to boot up an Xbox here in the studio without a Kinect hooked up, it doesn't work. It doesn't do it. Well, you can't. That was something that they were like very very big on as well. And so it's funny because I think if you look at where we are now, a lot of that stuff is stuff that if they had slow played it and not made it requirements, I think that they could have gotten what they were aiming for out of it without, they didn't need to, like used games and like this was all a push. Like I remember hearing that EA was very big on this because EA, if you remember, EA at the time was all about their Project $10 and they were selling online passes for games on Xbox 360 and PS3. If you bought them used, you had to give them $10 to play them online. And so this was kind of on the heels of that. And so it was the next phase of that. It was like, okay, wait, why don't we make it so you can't sell these games used, because every disc is just a delivery mechanism with a serial number attached to it, and you might as well take that disc and throw it the fuck away when you're done, because you can just like every disc became a serial number under the way they were building it. But I remember hearing stories that EA was going around at E3 the previous year and having meetings and going like, hey, like this is what we want. We want to push in this direction to eliminate the sale of used games because it is killing us. They had become convinced throughout, and the whole Project $10, that was their, that was the holy war that EA was trying to fight, was used games. And this was the thing that was hurting. This was the thing that was killing their business. And this is, X number of players played Burnout Paradise, but only this number of players bought it. And so people giving discs to each other and selling them used and all this stuff is murdering us. It was a really, it was something that they were very strongly fighting for. And other publishers, I think, were kind of right there with them, maybe not as vocally behind the scenes anyway, because that's something that EA can't, outside of an earnings call. It's really hard for EA to get out there and say like, hey, consumers, get fucked. It's a really, they were not going to go out there and do that. But like, every story I heard was like, meetings with platform holders with EA going, we've got to solve this. And so Microsoft solved it. That was their solution. And it fucking destroyed their entire fucking business. It took a long time to get there. But this is, I think, a direct descendant of why we're here with what is an Xbox console and whatever else. Whereas if they had slow played it, convenience always wins, right? Convenient, digital sales caught up as internet speeds got a little bit better for some people, some places. And preloading helped kind of take some of the load off of that, like, I want to play it at midnight kind of thing. More frequent sales of games on digital platforms ended up eliminating some of the benefit of like, used games cost less. I mean, that's not entirely true all the time, but like, it used to be that we didn't see a lot of sales on the Xbox and PlayStation storefronts, and Steam was really the only place where you were seeing those kind of semi-regular sales. Now Steam, I don't know if you've noticed, there is almost always a sale happening on Steam. I don't know if it's still underway, but last night, I swear to God, okay, no, it's a different sale now. Right now is Steam 4X Fest. Now through Thursday at 10 a.m., 4X games are on sale. Oh, no, it is still here. The midweek deal. The isometric sale. Okay, this is just a publisher. No, wait, what? This is the isometric sale. They have a unit on the front page where they're saying, like, here are a bunch of isometric perspective games. And we're put them on sale. So, yes, you can get Zaxxon for 99 cents now. No, they should have released Zaxxon on Steam specifically for this sale. The very idea of something where they're saying, the isometric RPG... Okay, so apparently it's just for RPGs. So Zaxxon, they would have to do the Zaxxon RPG, which, the isometric RPG game sale celebrates great RPG games with an isometric perspective. Wow. Isometric games have an angled in-game viewpoint that produces a 3D effect. This sale features a collection of top-tier isometric RPG games with special deals and offers. And it's like sponsored by a publisher who has an isometric game out. So I wonder if like in part of their launch of their game. No, this game came out in 2021. So what? All right. It's just a really weird, and so a publisher sponsored this sale on top of everything else. I love it. I want to see more insane carve-outs and just weird themed sales out of Steam, because they always have one or two going at a time, and they're always structured in a bananas fashion nowadays. It's not just here's our Christmas sale, here's our summer sale. It's like, or here's our Chinese New Year sale. Now it's like, here's the Evo sale for fighting games, here's this for this, and now it's literally above the fold, Steam 4X Fest and isometric sale. The isometric sale ends on the 14th, so if you get those games in, man. Get those games in. But sales have become more frequent on console platforms as well. And that's something that used to not happen. And so shifting consumer sentiment along with a desire for convenience, because we, as people who love to consume, love to convene, ourselves. Those things would have eventually blunted the impact of used games on their own. If you had slow played it, you would have gotten there. By rushing it here at the start of the Xbox One generation, obviously, they destroyed consumer sentiment. They created a ton of confusion in the marketplace about their console and what it was capable of. I tell the story about I went to New York for a PlayStation 4 launch event, or maybe it was where they were announcing the PlayStation 4. I went to New York twice. Once to get a PlayStation 4 because they had an event where they gave them out there. And then they had the previous one was where they kind of unveiled it for the first time and said, here's the name of the console and all this other stuff. On one of those trips, I was in a cab, and you talk about, what do you do for a living? I'm doing video game stuff. It's like, oh yeah, I was going to get one of those new Xboxes, but I hear, and this is like months after they've rescinded the always online thing, but that narrative totally stuck with them, and it really messed them up, because it got people who, like casual mainstream game fans who would not normally know or care about this type of minutia. They latched onto it and went like, oh, I'm not buying an Xbox. Like it had an effect. Anyway, that was a really wild time. That whole period was a really wild time. But at the end of the day, it was something that those major publishers wanted as well. And, someone was saying like, oh, isn't this basically the Nintendo key card problem or whatever? And I'd say like, yes, sort of. I mean, those issues are like adjacent, right? Where like the key card is basically a serial number on a card. The difference is that you can take that card and give it to someone else, and then they can still play the game. The discs were going to be useless. They weren't sure. I don't think they knew what you were supposed to do with that shit. I think it was going to be a case where like Project $10 of like, what was going to be across every single game, single player or otherwise, you were going to end up in a situation where like, I can hand you this disc and you can use it to install this game, but you still have to buy a license to play it. The disc is not the license anymore. The disc is just an install mechanism. And so, basically all those sales become digital no matter what, because the disc is just a key at that point. Or not, no, it wasn't even a key. There was a time when it was going to be a key, and then they were like, oh wait, no, like it's just going to be a serial number. And so you didn't need the disc at all, unless you wanted a faster install or something than your download speed would provide. And that whole thing was kind of ridiculous the way it all went, that's not how people wanted to deal with games. That's not, people wanted to lend a game to a friend. They wanted to like do all that sort of stuff. And so the idea of these discs as now just being useless, of being like, oh, I guess you could install the game here, but because I already added the game to my account. And then they were like, oh, well, we're going to do a thing where you can unlicense it from your console so the disc is good again, and then you can use it again or sell it, but there might still be a fee, like a $10 fee to transfer the license. Like there was a lot of weird shit around all of that too, and I think they were trying to figure it all out. And they were trying to figure it all out on an incredibly compressed time frame because they had stepped on the rake initially of saying they were going to do this, and suddenly they were like under pressure to fix it yesterday, And so the messaging around all of that and everything we were hearing about what the solution was going to be, like people were coming up with these scenarios about like, what if I want to bring an Xbox to a cabin for a week and there's no internet? What do I do then? And you're like, yeah, I guess. I mean, are enough people doing that to care about? Is that a thing? Is that is that an edge case that they need to cover, or are they okay just saying fuck you? But at that time they were not okay. Like nowadays, I think a lot of these platform holders are much more willing to just say fuck you in some of these edge case scenarios. But yeah, like all this stuff, it was a very messy transition that if everyone had just kind of hung back and waited, I think they would have all gotten what they wanted, as digital sales would eventually, and everyone knew it then. It was not some mystery. I think even back then people were like, oh, well, I mean, digital sales are going to overtake all this shit anyway. And what the fuck is GameStop going to do? Sell Funko Pops? Like, I don't know. And it turns out, yeah, they were going to sell Funko Pops. But I think everyone even knew then that like eventually, everything is going to go the way of Steam. And you could look at Steam and go like, Steam works well. People like Steam. People fucking love Steam. Are you kidding me? The convenience and the price and all of that other stuff. I think, like people, for the way that people complain about physical games, used games, and like I only collect this and that. Like Steam ends up being like the thing that flies in the face of that, and PC gaming in general, right? Because PC gaming went digital only a long time ago. Unless you're looking for like a copy of The Sims or something, like how many physical PC games get pressed up every year? And I think, a lot of that is owed, a lot of this because Valve has been good. Not always great. And at the beginning, yes, people fucking hated Steam. I was like, what the fuck is this? Why do I have to download a client? Like, what? I just want to play Half-Life. What is this bullshit? But like they were smart. They were like, okay, well, if you want to play Counter-Strike, if you want Counter-Strike updates, then you need to install this client to manage those patches or whatever, right? And so they were able to get people through the door pretty early on with that, and of course everyone wanted to play Half-Life and whatever. But like the number of people complaining about a lack of physical games for the PC is like basically it might as well be zero. People still cling to it on console because there's nostalgia associated with it. And they're like, well, I used to blow in the cartridges. And you're like, okay, I don't know. I guess you still want a disc now? Sure, I guess. Fine. But the other thing that Steam does, when I say that Steam is good and not always great, Steam has tried to do sensible things for consumers along the way. I think Steam's refund policy is great. I mean, best in the business, I would probably say, it's not, you're going to have situations where, the 2 hours are not going to be enough. But like, even in some of those cases, you can still write to them and be like, hey, I know mass out of the window, but this is not running right, or this is happening. And they will still refund you in some of those cases. But the ability to just kind of automatically refund something, especially on PC where, compatibility is an issue and all these other fucking weird things are problems. I think it makes a great amount of sense. And I think that that's been a game changer. I think it is frustrating that consoles have not adopted some friendlier version of that. And I think that as we push further and further into digital only sales, I do think that, there are going to be these cases where, those like a better return policy is going to make more sense on console as well. Especially when we get into a scenario where you've got 3 versions of a console or whatever it is, right? Where you're like, oh, hey, I have a portable PlayStation 6 and this game runs like fucking shit. I want my money back. Like they need to be sensitive to those sorts of issues as they push into that kind of territory, right? And I wish that they were better about it already. But I imagine that they, Nintendo and Sony and Microsoft probably look at this and go, oh, well, we don't have that compatibility issue that PC games have. So, we guarantee that this is going to be a functional experience. And so it's not going to be a scenario where the game doesn't run right, except in extreme cases like Cyberpunk and, some of that other stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a weird moment in time because, now Nintendo has its like game key cards and people are very angry about that. But I think they're looking at it kind of backwards. And this is not a way to say like, oh, isn't Nintendo great? Because I don't think that either solution is good, but you would not have gotten full games on cards because the cost of goods is too high for them to, reasonably, to reasonably, produce full games for some of these larger games. Like I don't think you can't even necessarily get anything larger or smaller than 64 gigs for a Switch 2 cartridge right now, right? I think that's changing. That the company that manufactures that stuff are looking to manufacture smaller ones, and so you may have scenarios where smaller games are able to do physical versions that are full versions because the cost of goods is not going to be crazy or whatever. But rejecting this, I don't think is going to lead to publishers going like, oh, okay, yeah, we need to put our full game on here and still charge the same price. Instead, it will be, okay, well, if this is what you want, we're going to put this out and charge more for it, or we are just not going to do it at all. And go like, oh, okay, if they don't have like value on the if they don't see the value in the game key card thing, we're just not going to do it, and we'll just sell it digitally. We'll just be a digital game, whatever, it's fine. Or hey, we'll be a serial number in the box, and you can buy that on a card and redeem it, and that way we can still do gifts or whatever, right? Like, I don't think that the way that people have been complaining about the game key cards will end the way that they want it to. And maybe I'll be wrong, because again, if the company that manufactures all the actual cards ends up making more and more sizes and the prices of that end up being reasonable, then maybe that kind of helps make it easier for publishers to produce different sizes of games, and the cost of goods can be, more to their liking. But I don't think they're just going to go like, oh, okay, well, I guess we'll just spend more and just eat it on our end so that you guys can buy that. I don't think the percentages are there. I don't think that there are enough people that are like mad about it to actually change anything, or to change anything that you won't have like new complaints about. I think the complaints just shift and become like, oh, why are they charging $80 for this? It's like, well, because you fuckers all said you wanted the whole game on the card, so here you go. Like, I think that's probably how that ends up going. Which is probably not a great outcome either. You will have someone who goes like, no, that's exactly what I want. And like, okay, well, fine, you're in kind of a minority there. Then at that point, then then physical games should just become the realm of these bespoke publishers that make a handful of copies for people who have shown that they want to pay way too much for a game. Because I think that the majority of other consumers are going to be more like, no, I don't want to pay extra money for no. I don't care how many cloth maps you put in this box. Like, I just want to get the game for a reasonable price. And it turns out none of these prices are reasonable. But what are you going to do? But I think that that's how physical games will end up either way. You know, that it will become something more of a like, oh, we're doing a run of physical versions of this. Did they end up doing the Alan Wake 2 physical versions? Did that end up ever happening? Yes, they did. Late last year. Okay. Well, like that was something when Alan Wake was coming out and it was only a digital game. People were like, what are you talking about? And I was like, well, you know, talking to some folks closer to that game, it was like, okay, well, this gives us a lot more time to actually work on it and get it in shape. And dude, we can, you know, and at that, even back then before the base game was out, it was kind of like, and we can do a physical down the line. And then that version will have probably most of the patches on it anyway, or whatever. I think that ended up not working out because I think you did still need to download something with those physicals when they did finally come out, but I don't know. Let's see here. What else we got? Alex writes in and says, on a recent version of DR Direct, DF Direct, Digital Foundry Direct. Okay, yeah, that makes more sense. I'm like, what are you? Richard Ledbetter was talking about getting review and preview builds of Genesis games on flash chips that would slot into a PCB that went into the Sega Genesis. Did you ever have any experience with those? And were there any other consoles or hardware that were similar? Were there any other unique methods by which you received preview and review builds? Yeah, I have. I probably have 5 or 6 like exposed boards for Genesis and SNES games. In some cases, yeah, it would be like, oh, do you have a board? Yeah, I have a board. Okay, we're just going to send you chips. And you would literally be like, okay, I'm using a butter knife to take this EEPROM out of this slot because I don't have a chip puller because I'm 17. And I bent a pin here. Ah, shit. And now I'm unbending this pin so it can fit. It sucked, man. Like, when you just had chips and not enough boards for all the chips, it was a fucking giant pain in the ass. I had a tube. It was like a big long tube that Glenn got from Tengen that had a bunch of their Genesis stuff on it, like Ms. Pac-Man and it was like Ms. Pac-Man and 3 other games. It was just a tube of EEPROMs, and you'd take out 3 of them and you'd put them in this board and put the board in and play Ms. Pac-Man and go like, okay, and then you'd take those chips out and rip them out and put different ones in and go from there. And yeah, but generally you would get a full thing with the board with the chips already in it. It wasn't always all that frequent for you to just get EEPROMs in the mail and be forced to slot them into the board yourself. And sometimes those boards would be covered. Sometimes they would be in cases. And so you'd have these kind of like, pre-release cases. I have like my copy of Rampart for the SNES is a pre-release version of the game, but it is still in like a SNES, SNES cartridge. So it looks, other than it having like a computer printed label that lists kind of the build date and whatever else on it, like it still kind of looks like a SNES game. You would have weird ones too, where like they would want it to be in a case so that it doesn't get banged around, but like the chips wouldn't fit inside a standard SNES case, so they took a fucking hot knife and just cut a hole in the case so this chip could just sit through it. And just like weird shit like that. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I've got a handful of those. I have a ton of fucking DS games. And DS games, all the boards are like covered in plastic, and like it's not like just a bare board. But I have like they're long, like they stick way out of the unit. And I have like 30 or something. I have a fucking bunch of those. And a bunch of GBA stuff as well. And none of it is super interesting. There's very little. There was, there's a couple of games that have debug menus and like very visible things where they're not finished, but so many of them are just like late preview units that I'm sure if you looked in very specific places. You might see some differences from final, but it's not a lot of stuff that's like dramatically different. But like the Genesis boards could get big. Like the board that I have a copy of Flashback, that it is just a bare board that is probably twice as tall as but it's probably 2.5 times as tall as the standard Genesis cart. Just honking big things sticking out of the machine. It's kind of rad. I don't know. I've got a handful of pre-release Neo Geo Pocket Color games that are all just in regular cases and stuff. There's nothing weird about the way they look per se. I've had a handful of. I'm in possession of a handful of those for sure, and I've dumped the ones that would dump. I have a couple of games that unfortunately seem like they are not functional anymore. But I have like a copy of, I think it's Earthworm Jim 2, maybe, for the Genesis, that says that the ending is disabled on it. It's either that or Bubsy. Might be a Bubsy 2 cart with that, but anyway, it's got a typewritten. Someone stuck a business card inside of a typewriter and wrote on it "ending disabled" and taped it to the board when they sent it out. And so I have some weird version there that apparently doesn't have an ending, but I never bothered to finish it because it was either Earthworm Jim or Bubsy, and like, who wants to fucking do that? For N64, I think all I have is a copy of Madden. It's some pre-release copy of Madden, and none of that is all that interesting. But yeah, I have a handful of those. That stuff's kind of crazy. Ryan from Edmonton writes in and says, when Microsoft bought Activision, they signed a 10-year agreement to bring new Calls of Duty to Nintendo platforms with feature parity and on the same release day as the Xbox version. This was largely viewed as an effort to appease regulators who might think they were trying to create a platform monopoly. Black Ops 7 is probably a few months out, so where the fuck is Call of Duty on Switch 2? Yeah, I don't know. Like, they also haven't announced a date for Black Ops 7. They haven't, I don't think they've gotten very specific about Black Ops 7 as well, at all. I would think that there is at least some possibility that Black Ops 7 ends up on Switch 2 in some capacity. If this is the year that they want to finally make good on that. Maybe it's not day and date because they're still kind of getting off the ground, but there was talk. Is Black Ops 7 coming out on PS4? It is, right? Yeah. So, they perhaps have just not announced it yet. It's certainly a possibility, but if they're going to continue to make Call of Duty games for PS4 and Xbox One, I feel confident they could get whatever that is running on a Switch 2, in some form. Which brings us to an email that I got about Switch 2 dev kits from someone who will remain anonymous. How about that? This is something this is something that makes a lot of sense reading it, but like I don't know. This is kind of a weird scenario, but I think I believe it here based on some of the other stuff here that I've kind of looked into here. But anyway, this is an anonymous person working in video games, I believe, talking about Switch 2 dev kits. We were talking recently about Digital Extremes and them saying that they did not have Switch 2 dev kits, and so they're not currently working on Warframe for Switch 2. And so on. I think the other thing is, like, with the way the world is now with enforcement of laws and rules and whatever else being so fucking up in the air, would anyone would anyone take it to Microsoft if they decided to just not put Call of Duty on the Switch? Who would enforce that? Would that actually be enforced? I don't think that's a game you want to play. I don't think you want to like flip a coin and go like, maybe it will. Maybe they just won't care. But anyway, this person wrote in about Switch 2 dev kits in the wake of that discussion and says, so my understanding is that Nintendo is not giving out dev kits freely because they do not want third-party devs and pubs to ship mini games on Switch 2 this year. There are secondary concerns about security and piracy as well. But I work for a well-known publisher with good relationships at NOA and NOE, and we've been kept at arm's length, had requests for dev kits for our partners delayed, etc. We have explicitly been asked by Nintendo not to ship Switch 2 SKUs until a date in early 2026. They never give 100% clear reasoning, but the implication we've gotten is they just don't want a lot of third-party games releasing in 2025. Essentially, they want to tamp down on releases outside of first-party games and a small handful of very high-profile third-party games. This is a concerted effort on their part I've been aware of since at least late last year, and they've made a very conscious effort to keep Switch 2 releases to a minimum for the first 9-ish months and told us as much. Just thought this might be interesting as it's a very Nintendo way to do things, and I don't hear a lot of people publicly talking about it, but it's well understood in developer and publisher circles. So, I think as a thing, when we look at something and maybe it is kind of the ultimate answer to any question you have about Nintendo is there's a very Nintendo-like solution for this sort of stuff, right? But in terms of them not wanting new releases this year, I could see that as being a situation where they know that their software lineup is slim for 2025, and maybe they want a fuller, larger push next year. Maybe they are planning to have more hardware on shelves in 2026. Now, this person is saying that they were made aware of this late last year. So we're talking about late 2024, which is well before any kind of tariff talk entered the conversation. So, it's almost certainly not related to like, hey, we don't know what the price of this device is going to be. But that probably can't be helping Nintendo's efforts to go like, if they were thinking like, oh, we're going to have a full push in 2026, and that's when the system will really kind of launch in a mainstream way, which I would say, looking at sales right now, it is already launched in a mainstream way. That maybe they're thinking like, oh, well, two things. One, they don't want a bunch of games out there overshadowing their first party efforts when they don't have a lot of them ready and to go, which is a possibility. The other thing I would say is that maybe it's a scenario where they were like being kind of skittish about availability and how many consoles they'd have to sell and whatever else. And so they knew by 2026 they would be where they needed to be, because they didn't want a bunch of stories getting out there of, hey, Switch 2 came out, our game didn't sell shit. So it makes sense that a lot of early adopters want the first party games and might not want a lot of the third party stuff, but I don't know, it seems like Cyberpunk did really well for a port of a pretty old game, I guess I should say. I guess maybe there's an angle here where, like, if they had a huge Switch 2 presence, maybe that kind of makes it harder for them to kind of sell out the rest of their Switch 1 hardware and whatever else. Like, they don't necessarily want a huge push into Switch 2. Maybe that's the reason. But yeah, this person is saying that there are secondary concerns about security and piracy, and that's certainly like, when we talk about why is there a certain amount of secrecy around access to dev kits and things of that nature, it is because there is a fear and this is definitely a fear that Sony had, and I think that Nintendo is probably in the same boat here. But there is a fear that like loose access to dev hardware is how custom firmware gets built. loose access to dev firmware builds and dev firmware updates and all of this, and is how people are able to kind of look at the system and go, well, what are they doing to make dev firmware run, and what can we do here to, like, there are situations with the PlayStation 3 where a lot of the features that you can get access to on custom PS3 firmware are things that have been reverse engineered out of debug hardware, or out of debug firmware rather. And so, you know, that's been something that spooked Sony. I've talked about it before. This is why the press did not get Vita hardware, any kind of Vita capture hardware, any kind of Vita dev kits or anything like that, because they were convinced that PS3 custom firmware happened because everyone had a fucking debug kit, and eventually someone got their hands on one and reverse engineered it and made custom firmware and hacked the PS3. So they were convinced that they did not want that to happen again, and so no one got Vitas. And no one covered the Vita. And here we are. That's probably not as direct of a correlation there, but it certainly didn't help that it was impossible to see video of Vita games being played. Anyway, the Switch one obviously was a fucking nightmare scenario for them in terms of piracy and firmware, you know, like all of the hacking stuff on the Switch one, I'm sure made them extra spooked. But Nintendo's view of third-party support has always been weird. It's always been weird, I think, in the modern era. You know, it used to be when Nintendo was just kind of the de facto standard, like when the SNES was the biggest thing on the planet. It was like, yeah, every third-party game's coming here. But that's not the case anymore. Like, kind of post-GameCube, you know, things sort of changed for them. N64 certainly, you know, was kind of a weird third-party time for them with Square defecting, and the cartridge stuff just made it a different beast, which I think, you know, is partially why the GameCube is so right in line with the other two platforms of that era, right? But the GameCube would sort of be the last time we would see that sort of parody, because they would go off and do the Wii and go in a very different direction. And in the Wii, I think they established themselves and probably established an extra level of confidence in their first party, where they were like, okay, yeah, no, we sell our consoles. We make the things that sell our consoles. The third-party stuff is we need it. We care about our partners. We want them to do well. It's not like they don't give a single fuck about it, but it's something that I think they probably view as like additive to what they themselves are doing, as opposed to, you know, I think when you look at the PlayStation and the Xbox, the biggest games there are third-party games, you know? Not to say the first-party Sony stuff is not something that people care about, but at the end of the day, it's going to be Grand Theft Auto. And it's going to be Call of Duty every year until something happens there. So with all of that in mind, when I kind of take the history of it all into context and think about third-party stuff on the Switch and how some of that went, what we just read here does start to kind of line up a bit, and you go like, oh, okay, all right. I guess I see why this would. I can see a world where Nintendo would behave exactly like this, and why. And I, you know, there's maybe a little more digging I would like to do into this, honestly, because it is just such a strange scenario, you know, because you could probably send out the dev kits and just say, hey, don't ship. We're not approving anything for release until this date, whatever. We're not going to let anybody publish until here. And let them get the games ready. Instead of having these frustrating circumstances where you've got, you know, developers with like relatively proven track records that would be able to put out a game. But I guess, you know, Warframe on the Switch 2 is not a sexy release. I'm sorry to say. Right? It's so maybe they're focusing their efforts that way, and maybe when it comes to dev kits and who gets them and who doesn't, maybe that's the sort of thing they're thinking of. I mean, I don't know. Like, there's not a. But, you know, but like, my point is like getting out there and saying like, and we've got Warframe on the Switch too. Like, it's not. It ain't Fortnite. when you say, yeah, we've got Fortnite on the Switch too, you're like, okay, that makes, yeah, okay, yes, this makes perfect sense. When they say, oh, we've got, Street Fighter 6 is kind of a weird one in light of some of that stuff. But Street Fighter 6 is a Street Fighter game, and Nintendo is able to now say, yeah, we've got a Street Fighter game that has feature parity with all the other versions of Street Fighter 6 because the Switch 2 is powerful. And so that's like a good story for them, right? And then because they're Capcom, they also get to put out Kunitsugami, because they're Capcom, and everyone loves Capcom. And Kunitsugami is probably like a good game that not a lot of people played, so they can kind of treat it as something else. But yeah, it's sort of a weird scenario. I bet if Ubisoft had games ready, they would have been able to absolutely ship at launch. No, they would not have told Ubisoft no if Assassins was ready, or Star Wars Outlaws, which they announced. I don't think they have not announced that they are doing Assassins. But obviously they would do obviously they would put that game on the Switch too, in some capacity. I think they said like, oh, we've got more platforms to. I think it was like earnings call speak about like, oh, and more platforms for Assassin's Creed, and then you're like, okay, well, there's kind of only one more platform left to discuss there. But yeah, I don't know, man. The world is weird and Nintendo is weirder, I think, is the kind of the only thing to say there. But I think we probably eventually, I think for a lot of reasons, even without the agreement in place and the 10-year deal and all the Call of Duty stuff that Microsoft had to kind of agree to get this deal over the line, to acquire Activision, all the horse shit that they had to sign up for. I think that's something that they would do anyway. I think that it makes sense for them to put Call of Duty on the Switch regardless of if they are compelled to do so or not. Because again, everyone is going to constantly be fighting for eyeballs on every screen, on every platform, everywhere. They can't afford not to past a certain point. If there are X number of players who have decided they want to have a Switch 2, and it probably, we're going to eventually probably see a day where there are more Switch 2s out there in people's hands than there are whatever current Xbox hardware is. It would be dumb for them to not do that. The Switch 2 is kind of just on the side of having power to get away with that. Sothan says, shame GTA can't be on it. I wouldn't be so sure. Again, in a world where everyone is going to be trying to put these games in as many different places as possible, I would not be surprised to see GTA appear on the Switch too. Would it be the same? Like, no, of course not. But if this console was kind of a Series S-ish sort of deal, somewhere in that realm of power, GTA 6 is presumably going to have to run on an Xbox Series S, right? They will eventually put that game out on PC, and they will probably target a wider array of devices at that point. And so I don't think it is out of the realm of possibility that GTA 6 could run on Switch 2. Whatever compromises they'd have to make to do that, sure. Like maybe that's a bridge too far, and maybe they go like, oh, we can do it, but it's not enough of the, like, we were not comfortable with it as, or whatever. And maybe they pull out of it. But the amount of money that would probably bring them, everyone involved, I think that's a good move for Rockstar. That's a good move for Take-Two. Like, that's the sort of thing that if it can happen, it will. Don't be so sure that the GTA is definitely a no-go for Switch 2. I think it's, I think their willingness to try to cram that game on there and make reductions if they have to put something on there, I think they will do it. I think there's just too much money for them not to. Again, unless they get into it and realize like, oh man, like our engine can't do this or can't do that. You know, like if it's just like, hey, we're destroying the core of this experience as a result of us having to scale it down, which the Switch 2 is obviously not as powerful as a PS5, but again, it's not that far outside the realm. I don't think it is outside the realm for them to give it a go. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know. Seth from Tampa writes in and says, what is the best multiplayer first-person shooter map of all time? And what are your top 3 to top 5? You know, I don't think about multiplayer shooters this way. I like Q3 DM17 a lot. I think Shipment is a fun Call of Duty map. It's dumb. I don't know that I would call it a good map, but it is fun. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of people saying Facing Worlds. Dust, of course, comes up always in these conversations. Blood Gulch, okay, yeah. Deck 16, sure. Yeah, Deck 16, all right. So this is probably a result of the way I played Quake and Quake 2 and Unreal Tournament, I suppose. But for me, the best era of multiplayer shooter was when modding and map making were so common that you just connected to a server and it felt like you got a different map. You got a map you had never seen before every single time you connected to a server. Because people were making all kinds of crazy shit. And some of them were terrible and some of them were good, but like whatever. Like at the end of the day, it didn't matter. It was just like, here's something new. So I don't care. Like every time they go like, we're re-releasing this map into Call of Duty, you know, like we've remastered, like I'm always like, what? I don't even... Karen Tan, what the fuck even are these? I just like, there are very few Call of Duty maps that I could tell you by name. And it's like, it's Shipment, it's Nuketown. Karen Tan, yeah, that's because they keep bringing it back. Yeah, I don't, Crash. Yeah, the one with the plane crash in the middle of it. Yeah, that map's good. I don't know, like because I'm usually, especially in those days, I was just playing regular deathmatch, and so I didn't have to really care about like, oh well, the spawn for one team is totally fucked, and this is that, and this is bad, and you know, like that sort of map balance stuff was something I never really cared about at that point. Team deathmatch, I don't know, you flip spawns so easily in Call of Duty and some of the stuff now that even in those situations where you're like, I don't know, one side of spawn is not great and this one's, you know, I'm like, I don't care. Especially now that we're not picking up weapons off the ground. You know, there was certainly a time where you're like, oh, well, if you spawn here, you're closer to the rocket launcher. But even then I'd be like, oh, well, I don't know. I die and respawn every fucking 45 seconds or less. So maybe next time I'll spawn near the rocket launcher. It's fine. Like I wasn't playing 1v1s with Thresh. Like I wasn't trying to win a fucking Ferrari. I don't give a shit about fucking like, well, I've got to go here and I've got to walk my loop and do this and the timing here. And if I listen here, I know this armor's respawning and I know that this weapon's here and the rocket launcher. Like, no. I want to load onto a map that I've never fucking seen before and shoot a bunch of people on it. And then that match is over and I'm on to another map I've never seen before. Like that was always the cool part about shooters of that era. You know, just like jumping onto servers and going, oh, this one's low gravity. I don't know what the fuck is going on here. like just having these like relatively random experiences inside of these games was so much fun. That I've just never been a map guy. Like there are certainly maps I like and don't like and whatever, I guess, but like I don't know. I stay kind of removed from that. Like, I think Quake 3 has some pretty good maps, some really great maps. If you ask me what's my favorite map, I will probably almost always just say DM17. But there are very few Quake maps that I would say that I out and out dislike. But you know what? I would say that like, and I couldn't name them now because but I definitely went through and tried to filter out some, like when I play Call of Duty nowadays, I tend to look for smaller maps because I'm just trying to fucking get in there and just have like some chaos and get some XP and unlock some shit. Like I don't really like the larger Call of Duty maps, I guess I would say. Fat Scout says 2 Fort is culturally important but kind of sucks layout wise. Yeah, I'm sure that's the case. I don't care about any of those team modes and all the CTF shit, and just like I don't want to play team. I never wanted to play team games prior to 2007. Prior to the release of Call of Duty for Modern Warfare, I did not want to play any kind of team anything. I don't like CTF games. I don't want to play any CTF in anything ever. Period. I have hated CTF for decades. I don't want to map keys for fucking dropping runes and all this other fucking bullshit. Like I don't want to fucking do it. So that was in some ways that was kind of the crazy, one of the crazier things that Call of Duty 4 pulled off was they made team deathmatch the default. After years of, Quake and everything else, like no one was playing TDM there really. If you were playing a team game, you were probably playing a CTF. But like, I just wanted to play deathmatch. And then when Call of Duty 4 came out, there was an initial period where I was like, man, fuck this. What the fuck? I just want to shoot everybody. Like, fuck all these people. But like, they managed to make, what they did to team deathmatch and did more of in the years to follow is they made it as carefree as real deathmatch. Where you're just like, oh yeah, I'm just fucking out here shooting people. Like, I don't give a shit about what's my team doing. Like, who fucking cares? There's no team damage anyway. Who cares? They managed to make it as fucking, lone wolf as they could while it still technically is a team game, which is probably smart in a weird way. But yeah. Anyway, that's going to do it for us here. For the 166th episode of this here podcast, I'm going to get going. Be back with you later this week. We'll rank some 8-bit Nintendo games, and there's some other stuff. I don't know. Like there was some other stuff, but there's kind of, the Battlefield stuff isn't back on until the weekend. I'm interested. I want to see Mafia, the old country. I want to see a little bit of that, but I don't know. Nothing about that game speaks to me at all. I'm interested in kind of seeing it from kind of like a technical perspective or whatever, but there's nothing. There is nothing about in terms of subject matter. Like, it's a mafia game that's set in old Sicily. Yeah, okay. You lost me. If I am not a big organized crime, I'm not a big mafia guy, just conceptually, like the Mafia franchise, as well as just mafia stories in general. It is just not my thing. Like, I never gave a fuck about The Sopranos, really. So it's fine. I think if I want mafia stories, I want them to be kind of set in the 70s, or thereabouts. You know what? I like the movie Goodfellas. I like Casino, and that's about it. Everything else, like, I'm good. But that's kind of where it stops. So I don't know. Just in terms of like, mafia, Italian organized crime, like all that, just that whole genre. I'm just like, whatevs. But I am curious to kind of see it. I heard it's not super long, which is kind of a neat idea. The idea of just like, hey, let's make this like reasonably length single player game or so, But yeah, maybe I'll take a look at it. I'm gonna get going. Have yourself a good rest of your Tuesday, and I will see you soon. We'll do something with video games. I don't know. Have a good one. Bye.